bring it up?
Is this from you?
A message in a bottle. Put it in the water, see what happens.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Housing Authority for the City of Salem, our meeting for Monday, July 24th, 2023. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Commissioner Nishioka?
Present.
Vice Chair Phillips?
Here.
Commissioner Gwynn?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez? Commissioner Hoy?
Here.
Commissioner Nordyke?
Here.
Commissioner Varney?
Here.
Resident Commissioner Villegas? Absent. Chair Stapleton?
I'm here. I think our resident might be joining us online, so we'll watch for her. Okay, Councilor Gwynn, would you lead the room in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Vice Chair Phillips, do we have any additions or deletions?
Not tonight.
Okay, do we have any public comment? All right, no public comment tonight. Vice Chair Phillips, the consent calendar.
I move the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's moved by Phillips, second by Nishioka.
The consent calendar tonight consists of 3.1A, which is the July 10th, 2023 draft Salem Housing Authority minutes, and 3.2A, which is the intergovernmental agreement between the Housing Authority of the City of Salem and the City of Salem for administrative services. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Great. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the recorder please call the roll?
Commissioner Nishioka?
Aye.
Vice Chair Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Gwynn?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez? Absent. Commissioner Hoy?
Aye.
Commissioner Nordyke?
Aye.
Commissioner Varney?
Aye.
Resident Commissioner Villegas? Absent. Chair Stapleton?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We have no public hearings and no special orders of business, but we did have a wonderful project management report, and we do have Nicole Oots here from the Housing Authority. Does anybody, well, how about we start with you, and you can maybe give the public the great update that you gave us, and then we'll see if there's any questions.
Sure. I'm Nicole Yates. I'm the Housing Administrator for Salem Housing Authority. First and foremost, and it's not included in this, but I'm sure it will be highlighted in upcoming, we were successful with the closing of Orchard Park Apartments, which has retained affordability for the next 60 years on that complex for the families who reside. Our number one concern is obviously the community itself. I know that the new management company has already swooped in there. They're getting ready to start the construction on the 21 fired out units, the burned out completely units from 2021. So we hope to have those, Aberdeen hopes to have those completed no later than I think this upcoming year, so we'll have those back up in line. It's great news. Watch for continued progress, and we'll continue to work with the management company to help approve the affordable housing at that location. Also, you'll see in tonight's program management report, Sequoia Crossings is coming along quite nicely. We're at about 60%, above 60% complete now. So even from those pictures, the day-to-day progress at that site is just amazing. I wanted to let you know that Oregon Housing Permanent Supportive Housing Institute will be highlighting Sequoia Crossings and bringing 45 members of that team through on August 1st for a tour and a panel discussion on how we made it happen, since we are the first in the region to get this far along. So we're pretty excited for that. We'll also be celebrating National Night Out at Parkway Apartments, and anybody's welcome to join us there to help with that celebration. I did want to bring some attention to a complex in Portland. It's called McCarthy Place. It's a 10-unit permanent supportive housing, low-income housing, subsidized, and unfortunately one of their workers was killed at that location overnight shift. It just brings to the fact that this work is complicated and complex, and our safety of our employees is paramount, but we wanted to keep Haley Rogers and her family in our thoughts. So.
Thank you for letting us know about that. And of course, we send all of our thoughts and prayers to their family, and that's really devastating news to hear. And again, send our gratitude to folks who work for you and all of the risks that they take in order to do a really great job for our city. I don't want to let Orchard Park go. Do you want to talk really quick? Because I would like to have a round of applause at some point in time for this great work, and to also thank the mayor for his advocacy on this as well, and all of the different players. I know there's lots of city staff to thank. Do you want to talk for a few minutes about it?
I won't talk for a few minutes, but I will talk for a few seconds. I would like to thank Nicole and Jessica for their outstanding work. They sounded the alarm early Friday morning, and they email arrived in my inbox with an urgent, important, please respond. It immediately went to the mayor, and we started reaching out to all of our contacts. Fortunately, the mayor has a very powerful, in the day it would have been a Rolodex, today it's your cell phone, and he was able to make some contacts, and immediately we started seeing movement. But it was smoke and not necessarily fire until later in the day, about, 7 o'clock when we...
Yes, it was about almost 7 o'clock when we finally heard.
When we finally learned that, yes, we would actually be able to close the following week, and it took till Tuesday to actually get the units closed. But putting 224 units into more or less permanent affordable status, 60 years to me is forever. I will be long gone then. For those of you who will still be here, I hope they can enjoy that. But it is a memorable step forward for our community and for this organization. So thank you, Nicole and Jessica and the mayor and Justin and everybody else who worked to make that a success. It would not have happened without that energy. So thank you.
Thank you. It was absolutely an all hands on deck.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much again. Do we have any questions from other members? Yes, Nordyke.
Thank you so much, Chair Stapleton. Ms. Oots, a couple questions about the report, just to help unpack some of the concepts that might be unfamiliar to those who are new to all the incredible work that you folks do. For the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, it states here that 52% of your households, which is 52% of 138 households, accrued escrow during the month of June. What do you mean by that, accruing escrow in this context?
Certainly. So the escrow that is accrued in the month of June means that those individuals have increased their income and their rents would go up higher. But instead of us taking that rent and or having that person pay the higher rent, the housing authority continues to pay the subsidy, and their rent portion then goes into an escrow account. Once they've completed all the steps of the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which can take up to 5 years, they are then, they're graduated from that program, and that escrow check is given to that individual for, many of them use it as a down payment to purchase a home. We've had many great success stories. We've had individuals take that check and start their own business. They have long-term goals, and at the end of that, they are able to use that funding for those means.
So to be clear, the escrow account is set aside for specific purposes for them achieving self-sufficiency in the long run?
Yes, that's correct. And the 52% means that we had over half of those on that list earning additional income and actually accruing into that account, which is a really good sign.
Okay, terrific. And one more question, if I may. Moving on to the Veterans Assistance Supportive Housing Programs, or VASH. The VASH program currently houses 75 households. Can you just explain a little bit more what the VASH program does and what these households consist of?
Sure. So this is a memorandum of understanding with the Oregon Department of Veterans Administration. We get all of our referrals for the VASH, as we call it, Veterans Administrative Supportive Housing. They do come with supportive services through ODVA, Oregon Department of Veterans Assistance, and these individuals can then receive a voucher from the program and then to utilize out into the community. This is a set aside, so these are specifically referred to us from that entity. The numbers do fluctuate based on, my understanding is that we lost 5 recently. Some of that is due to individuals who are unfortunately deceased or had moved on to additional care, such as the Dalles Veterans Home, other locations. So with that, you will see that number go up and down, but really we're reliant on the referrals for those.
Great. Any other questions? I know yes.
I would just like to make a comment about Orchard Park as well. Sure. I have experienced this with Nicole and the Housing Authority staff, not just with Orchard Park, but the same thing with Yaquina Hall and other work, that this team, Orchard Park, I don't know, it was 2 years ago when we first learned that it was going to be coming out of affordability, and the state approached us to see if there's anything we could do to keep it in affordability. Projects like this happen because of the passion and the commitment and the dedication that folks like Nicole and Jessica and other staff at the Housing Authority have. There have been so many times during Yaquina Hall or during this Orchard Park project where it would have been so easy to say, okay, well, this is the 4th, 5th obstacle, and boy, we gave it our best shot, and it's just not meant to be, and we tried, and we walk away, right? But that's not what they do. And so I just wanted to speak to that for a moment, because it was so touch and go over the last few weeks with this project, and so many times over the last couple of years. And the same thing with Yaquina, where it's like, it's going to be a miracle if this happens. You know, that I just don't see how we can pull this together. There are just too many hurdles. And here we are, and it happened because of that commitment, and it's truly extraordinary effort that makes stuff like that happen. So she will never toot her own horn, ever, or for the organization, right? So I just wanted to take an opportunity and toot for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Embarrass her a little bit, I guess.
It's our mission, and we're very committed and dedicated to it.
Great. I wanted to highlight one more thing in your report, and I think that was one of the last sentences you had, and I don't have the printout of it, so I might get it wrong. But I believe you said that since 2014, how many housing units have you helped?
So we've actually constructed or preserved over this. Sequoia is our 11th apartment complex here in this community. That's not, we have over, I think we're up to almost 900 of those that were either special limited partners or general partners that we've just committed to in the last 3 to 4 years.
That's fantastic work. I think we call that grit and determination, right? Yes. Okay. Everybody done fawning over Salem Housing Authority? Maybe. Until next time, thanks for all the work you do. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
I don't know what it is. I'll call this meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency for the City of Salem for Monday, July 24th, 2023 to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Stapleton.
I'm here.
Board Member Nishioka.
Here.
Board Member Phillips.
Here.
Board Member Gwynn.
Here.
Board Member Gonzalez. Board Member Hoy.
Here.
Board Member Nordyke.
Here.
Board Member Varney.
Here.
Chair Hoy.
Here. Councilor Stapleton, do we have any additions or deletions?
Not tonight.
All right. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Nobody signed up for public comment? Councilor Stapleton, the consent calendar.
Thank you. I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you.
Moved by Stapleton, seconded by Phillips. Councilor, to your motion.
Yes, we have just one item tonight, and that is 3.1A, the June 26, 2023 draft Urban Renewal Agency minutes. And that concludes our consent calendar.
Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Phillips.
Aye.
Board Member Gwynn.
Aye.
Board Member Gonzalez. Absent. Board Member Hoy.
Aye.
Board Member Nordyke.
Aye.
Board Member Varney.
Aye.
Board Member Stapleton.
Aye.
Board Member Nishioka.
Aye.
Chair Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. Ms. Rutherford, did you have anything for us before we adjourn?
I do not.
Excellent. We are adjourned. And now I will call this meeting of the Salem City Council for Monday, July 24th, 2023 to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Stapleton.
I'm still here.
Counselor Nishioka.
Present.
Counselor Phillips.
Here.
Counselor Gwynn.
Here.
Counselor Gonzalez. Absent. Counselor Hoy.
Here.
Counselor Nordyke.
Here.
Counselor Varney.
Here.
Mayor Hoy.
Here. All right. Councilor Stapleton, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Not tonight. Oh, dang it. I always forget things.
So
Sorry.
close. I'm sorry. Councilor, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We do.
I thought we might.
Yes. I move that we add the motion 5.B from Councilor Vanessa Nordyke regarding the South Salem Town Hall. I need a second.
Second.
Moved by Stapleton, seconded by Phillips. Any discussion?
None.
Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Phillips.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez. Absent. Counselor Hoy.
Aye.
Counselor Nordyke.
Aye.
Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Stapleton.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. On to council and city manager comments. And I understand our city manager would like to start.
I don't necessarily need to start, but I do want to thank all of the city employees who participated in supporting the Ironman event this weekend. You could not help but see their presence and feel their presence at the event. And obviously prior to it, the course was safe, with the exception of maybe some of our participants. But the course was well marked and safe, and having the police and fire and public works there and ready to respond to emergencies is just extraordinary. I was down there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were wide awake and ready to go. It made me proud to be part of the city and to be supporting such a wonderful event in our community. Downtown has never looked more vibrant than it did at 6 o'clock in the morning, with every parking stall full, people on the street streaming down to the event. So it's just a great example of what we can accomplish when we work together. And again, thank you to all the city employees who participated in supporting it and making sure it was a safe and beautiful event. Both Minto Park and Riverfront Park looked so great. I'm sure any visitor to the community said, wow, and walked away with that impression of our community. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you. It really was an amazing weekend, wasn't it? Any other comments? Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you. Yes, it was a privilege to be asked to hold the finish line ribbon for the women's race, and I got the privilege to do that with Mayor Clark from Kaiser, and she and I really enjoyed ourselves. It was my first time that I've been able to attend the Ironman, and it was just amazing. I texted both the mayor and the city manager as I was walking in, just saying, man, our city is just alive and thriving at this moment, and it really did look spectacular. I wanted to highlight a couple of things that happened in my ward, and one that is going to happen. The Highland Neighborhood Association, I just want to highlight them for a minute. This is a neighborhood association that really dwindled down to 1 or 2 people as I was taking office 3 years ago. Since then, members of the community have stepped up and have taken on different leadership roles within that organization, and it is really doing spectacular work. They have a community garden there that's thriving. They had their intersection art done, and they're doing all kinds of outreach to their neighbors. And they had their first Highland cleanup, which was along Portland Road. They had 9 people show up. And for those of us, I know the mayor and I have both helped with these types of events with neighborhood associations. 9 people is, you're a rock star if you can get 9 people to show up for a street cleanup. So I wanted to thank Ryan Erickson. He is the secretary for the group and the one who led this effort. So thanks to him and all the folks who showed up to do that event. I also want to highlight that the Inglewood Forest Festival, which I'm sure many of you know about and have maybe attended, is coming up on August 12th from 10 to 4 p.m. at Inglewood Park, which is on 19th Street Northeast. A gem of a park, a wonderful event that's put on by the community. It's free and wonderful. I hope you all can come. And lastly, I wanted to say happy anniversary to my husband, because he loves these kind of grandiose public displays of affection. I think it's 21 years, but I'm not entirely sure. But I do think it's 21 years. I'm like 99% sure. I'll check in with him tonight. So anyway, happy anniversary, honey.
Happy anniversary. Other comments? Councilor Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just want to comment on the Ironman. This is the first year that I didn't have to work in the emergency room, so it was a thrill to go and be there with yourself and so many of our colleagues here tonight. See you, Mayor, hold the finishing line with our colleague, Commissioner Gordon from Polk County, and to see Council President Stapleton and Mayor Clark from Kaiser hold the finish line for the professional women's champion, who won it last year and won it again this year, and just hear them, talk so positively about the investments we've made in our community. Talk about, how pleasant of a race this is for the people who participate as athletes, and then just to see the joy and love and the friends and family who are there to support them. It was just the winner of the women's race talked about how it's like kind of absurd. There's this bald eagle flying around, and when I was leaving, I joined Councilor Nishioka, and on cue, the bald eagle flies right over the Willamette. So it was really fun to see what we as a community can do when we work together and make investments here locally. I got to see one of my colleagues in the emergency room participating. We've always had a couple every year, and we did this year. It was just a really moving event, and it makes me so proud to call this place my home.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. I just want to give a shout out to the Salem Art Association Art Fair that also took place this weekend. It was a busy weekend in Salem. And the great job that they have continued to do year after year. So it was a fantastic event. And this is a piece that I got last year. I bought something else. It wasn't the weather-wise, the piece to wear tonight. But again, I really appreciate Salem Art Association and all that they do for the art fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Hoy.
I'd like to piggyback on that. The art fair was amazing. It really was done very well and very different. I think the last time I was there was maybe 15 years ago, and it's changed quite a lot. And it's just a really great event. The other thing, the Ironman, oh my gosh, I've never been so impressed with humanity in all my life than watching those people come across the finish line who have worked so hard. And they what is it, they swam how far? 2 miles, a mile and a half? They biked 56 miles, and then they ran 13 miles.
So it's 1.2 miles swim.
Okay.
And then it's a 56-mile bike ride and 13.1 half marathon, so a total of 70.3 miles.
Unbelievable. I didn't get to hold a ribbon, and I didn't get to do that, but y'all left behind 2 medals from hanging medals on people, and I scooped them up, and I waited, because I knew I wasn't going to go home with them, but I waited, and a couple was running the marathon together, and the woman finished first. And she came over, I said, "You want water?" And she said, "Yeah, thank you." She goes, "I need to know where my husband is." And I said, "Well, that guy's got the app. Give him your number and he'll tell you where he is." And the husband comes across the line, and because I gave her a medal, she was able to put the medal on him, which is what she wanted to do. So I thought that was just really awesome. Anyway, it was so intense. I mean, when people put every bit of themselves into something, a physical accomplishment like that. It's very impressive. I was so moved. I let my husband know about it, and now at 67, he's going to start to train for next year's Ironman. And he's pretty darn excited about it. He wanted me to do it, and I'm like, you do that. You take that one on, I'll be on city council, okay? Anyway, I just want to say thank you. I understand also it's the largest revenue generating event in Salem. Is that accurate? I believe so. That's what I've heard. I've also heard that they just signed for 5 more years of doing that event in Salem, so I think that's pretty incredible. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you so much. So many good things have already been said, so I'll abbreviate my remarks accordingly. 2,500 athletes at Ironman. It's a sellout show, people, and I hear a rumor that it's coming back, which is outstanding. And I also want to echo what our city manager started with, which is a kudos to the staff. Our city looks in top form when Ironman rolls into town. It kind of reminds me, every time my boyfriend can always tell when we're about to have company over because I'm cleaning for a change. Our house always looks the cleanest in the hour before the guests arrive, and then never again. Anyway, TMI? Anyway. So our city was in peak form too. I saw repainted lines for the bikes. I saw, all of the everything from the flowers, the grass, and et cetera, everything was in top form. I live off River Road, so I saw firsthand all of the volunteers who are working very hard in full sun to ensure the safety of all the cyclists on the road. I saw no less than 3 law enforcement officers at the intersection of Madrona and Commercial. I saw more volunteers in another location, River Road. Everyone was making sure that this was a safe route on our city street for some of the time. So I really want to give all my kudos to our staff, because it's not much of a race if it's not a safe race. And so that takes a lot of manpower, no question. Travel Salem, of course, has been instrumental in helping to bring the Ironman competition over the finish line. Haha, pun intended. Take that, the rest of Oregon. So it's pretty cool. It's really exciting that Ironman Oregon is in Salem. And when they think of Oregon, when these international athletes and plenty of other out-of-towners think of Oregon, they think of Salem. That's pretty cool. One of the guys I talked to is an athlete from Vancouver, British Columbia. He and his adult son drove all the way down, slept in his van, apparently, and the first thing he asked me was, well, it's time to carb load. I got a big race tomorrow. Where do I go? So, of course, I recommended local restaurants to him. So that's just one example of that enormous economic benefit that Councilor Hoy was referring to. So anyway, kudos, outstanding, hope to see him back. I'm also a huge supporter of the Salem Art Fair, and I went as well. Beautiful event yet again. Side note, that was where I started my volunteering journey with the city. My very first volunteer opportunity was working the kids' court as a face painter, which is a great way to get children to hold still for an entire minute, like completely frozen, transfixed. Because if you're gonna paint Spider-Man on their face, that is their face for an entire moment of bliss. Take note, parents. And so, yeah, it's been, and we haven't even talked about Hoopla, which is another outstanding opportunity, particularly for local youth, getting our youth moving, getting them physically engaged. There's so much to be learned from participating in a team sport. You learn how to fail, you learn how to lead, you learn how to be a team player, both literally and figuratively. So congratulations to all of those who participated in that. This was an amazing weekend for Salem, and we've got many more to come. The only other comment I will make is something I'm super, super excited about. One of my other side hustles is that I'm a board member for the With Nell Family YMCA. And on August 10th, y'all are invited. August 10 a.m., we will have a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Courtney Place Veterans Housing at 685 Court Street. This is a huge deal. This is about creating accessible and extremely affordable housing for low-income military veterans, many of whom continue to struggle with the aftermath of combat service. This is a great option for military veterans, co-ed, who are either homeless or at risk, great risk, of becoming homeless. it's a good reminder that even though this isn't a city project, when our community partners do well, the entire city does well. It helps relieve pressure off of our shelters, our navigation center, when you see UGM doing well, when you see Safe Sleep United doing well, Simonka Place, Family Promise, Church at the Park, Arches, Taylor's House. The list goes on. Center for Hope and Safety and their Mosaic project. All of our community partners help lighten the load by working collaboratively towards serving our vulnerable populations. And this ribbon cutting ceremony for low-income veterans is no exception. So I'd love to see you all there. Google it, RSVP. I'd love to join you at our ribbon cutting ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Other comments? Councilor Stapleton.
I was hoping that you could share a little bit about our time at the micro shelter, the youth micro shelter. Would be great.
Thank you. That was on my list of things to say when it was my turn. So are there any other comments? All right. So yeah, the week before last, we opened our third micro shelter community out on Turner Road. It's the one that is dedicated to younger adults, 18 to 24-year-olds. It was a great event. Thanks to Church at the Park and all of their great staff and volunteers. I'm really excited about that one opening up. It's a dedicated resource for our young people that we've really been missing. So I think that's going to be a really great asset for our community. The other thing I wanted to mention, and then we'll move on, is I had the opportunity, an amazing opportunity last week to participate with 39 other mayors from around the world at the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. It's a year-long program, and last week was the kickoff. It was really exciting to get to spend time with the mayor of Amsterdam and Cape Town, South Africa, and Turin, Italy, and Los Angeles, and all over Calgary, people from all over, and really excited about the things that's going to open up for the city. And I had the ability to nominate two of our senior leaders to attend a follow-up session, and so our city manager, Keith Staley, and then our one of our deputy city managers, Krishna Namburi, will be attending that program in the coming weeks. So, and then it'll open us up for a lot of other Bloomberg options in the future. So I'm really excited about that. So with that, let's get moving on, get to business. Thank you. We are on to public comment. Let's see. I'm going to start with Curtis Grubbs. Step up to the microphone, please. Hit the green button so the light comes on. Be sure and introduce yourself and either your address or your ward. So there we go. And you have reminder, hold on one second. Reminder, you have 3 minutes. The yellow light's going to start flashing when you have 1 minute to go, and then the red light's going to come on when your time's up. If you would stop talking at that point, we would appreciate it.
Sure. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Chris Hoy and council members. My name is Curtis Grubbs. I'm also a former city mayor of Willamina. I've lived here in Salem at 211 Court Street, Ward 1. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate you and thank you guys for the decisions that you have been making. I do not necessarily agree with the decision that you chose in regards to the payroll tax, but it was a very challenging decision we face here in this city. One, you didn't hide it as a service charge or a utility fee. I must congratulate you so much for doing so. And you know, it's a tough decision. We have a lot of things going on in our community and that, but I do ask that sometimes when we make decisions that have so much input from the citizens around that have come together and that are not happy with it, that we might reconsider it. In past, City of Salem has taken time to present money issues to the citizens, and the citizens have been very generous in the fact that they've come upon and taken on levies and different things for our community, and it's very important. This one, I think it's been a mistake in the way we went and not listening to the public at this point. But thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Francine, I'm sorry, Belusa? I never can remember how to say it exactly. I apologize.
Replaced recently, so I have to go down backwards. I know, I'm going to go down backwards. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
We can bring a microphone to you if that would be easier.
I'm on my way.
All right.
One speed.
Yeah, our council chambers unfortunately were designed at a time when we didn't think about accessibility issues. We're hoping to fix that soon.
Right. So the green button is here.
Yeah, it's on. Nope, now you turned it off. One more. There you go.
Okay, good evening.
Perfect.
I'm Francine Belosa. I live in Ward 2, and I have served on the library's, Salem Public Libraries Advisory Board since 2018. And I'm here tonight because on your agenda, item 3.3C, you will have the opportunity to approve Matthew Jobson, Valerie Harris, and Gretchen Copperidge to the Library Advisory Board. And now all wards except 1 and 6 will have a lab representative. There remains one vacancy, so if any of you know of someone who might want to serve, that's still one slot of our 9 that's open. Terms on the lab, or the Library Advisory Board is called the lab, are 4 years long, and there's an opportunity to go for a second consecutive term, and many people do. We provide continuity during change, and there certainly has been a lot of change in the library in terms of the city librarian and also with the reorganization of city government and it now being under the Department of Community Services. There's so much to celebrate about our Salem Public Library. It was on target with this huge renovation during a pandemic. There's a beautiful new bookmobile about to go out into the community. There's programming across all ages. There's literacy programs, there's outreach, there's a vibrant teen scene, and a very engaged teen advisory board, which reports to our library advisory board monthly. The staff is dedicated and hardworking. There are state-of-the-art reservable reading and meeting rooms that are free to the public for the most and are really just top-notch. Past council support of lab initiatives secured 3 hours of free parking. Prior to the pandemic, a city-sponsored survey of residents, 88% of people who responded why they don't go to the library identified parking fee challenges. So by eliminating that, we have opened up an opportunity for more people to come to the library and stay long enough to attend programs and get their kids to go to the bathroom and get their kids to check out their 20 books one at a time, all of which take time and put pressure on the person who's with them to get back to the car if there's that, feed the meter. So we're so grateful for the past council support on that. The other thing we're grateful for is paying attention to the burden of overdue fines and eliminating those, and which restores the ability for some people who were locked out of being able to borrow at the library because
I apologize, Francine, but your time has expired.
No, has it really?
It really has. It goes so fast, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh.
I am so sorry.
All right, well,
Thank you for your service on the lab. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to hear her conclude remarks, and I do have a couple questions about the lab also as you're thinking about that. You say you're still recruiting and have a vacancy. As I do with all of the boards that we have in the city, I really encourage you to use an equity lens as you search for and recruit board members. I see you nodding, so I see that we have a meeting of the minds there. I also know from serving on the board's appointments committee that we tend to have relatively low applications from North Salem or Northeast Salem. So definitely would encourage spurring more interest in that area. But with that in mind, was there anything else you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say that LAB has supported the Teen Advisory Board in its Take What You Need programs with startup monies and also with their SEED project, which we understand from patrons has been very popular. We contribute annually to Salem Reads, and we're grateful for the opportunity to have participated in interviews for the Deputy City City Manager for Community Services and also for the City Librarian in the past. And we feel our background in being engaged with the library and its ongoing work that we contribute to that interview process.
Thank
you
you.
for that opportunity.
And I did have a question buried in the middle of my screed. Are there eligibility requirements to serve on lab?
There's an application that's standard by the city online, and no, I don't.
You don't have to be a pro librarian or
No.
a curator of a
and
museum.
we
or-
really have a diverse group now. We have the two of the new people coming on. I believe, I haven't met them, but I believe they have younger children, and they are, one of them has been very involved in the Multicultural Center and in the World Beat. And so we're excited to be welcoming these new members as well.
Thank you. Ron Ikas.
Thank you.
Councilors, Mr. Mayor, my name is Ron Ikas. I live at 940 Salem Heights Avenue South, which is in Ward 7. I'm one of several here to speak to you today about item 5A on your agenda, the inclusion of Salem Heights Avenue Refinement Plan in the TSP. Though it's non-controversial at this point, there are several of us who participated in this project who feel it's important for you to see the faces of the people in the neighborhood and to understand how we got here. 4 years ago, Salem Heights residents weren't very happy with the city and with the Wren Heights development. As usual, the primary issues were traffic and trees. It didn't go well for us. Despite being located between two close elementary schools, our unimproved Collector Street had no sidewalks, curbs, or pathways. It had been a low priority for improvement for over 35 years, yet it was facing an increase of over 10% in daily traffic. Staff did agree the street was indeed unsafe, but not unsafe enough for further traffic study or changes in the development. After a citywide oak was removed without a final permit, we were told we couldn't appeal. More traffic was added and more trees were cut than our neighborhood desired. But we did get the city's attention. The city realized that Salem Heights, with more infill to come, did truly need improvements. It also recognized that there were many other previously annexed county roads facing similar circumstances. Councilor Sally Cook organized a meeting with some of us and the city manager, and thus began the more collaborative, forward-looking refinement project. This improvement plan is the result. You'll hear more, but I want to highlight important aspects of the plan. First, it had a notably high level of public participation. Second, the resultant preferred alternative increases safety, but most important, it does so while maintaining the character of the street. And third, the process and the result can serve as a model to apply to other streets. But there's one final point left to emphasize, and it has to do with your role. Inherent in this process is a belief that it will actually have meaning. By participating, we've placed our trust in the city that this effort will actually lead to improvements via an upgrade in priority for Salem Heights, and that it will no longer be relegated to an everlasting low priority status. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ikas. Mr. Ted Burney.
Hi, I'm going to follow up on Ron's remarks also. My name is Ted Burney, and good evening, Mayor Hoy, councilors, and city staff. I live in Ward 7. I'm the chair of the Southwest Association of Neighbors. We are known as SWAN, and I'm here this evening to provide support for the motion to include the Salem Heights Refinement Plan and Salem's Transportation System Plan. The Southwest Association of Neighbors has been involved with the Salem Heights Refinement Plan for the past 4 years. This has been our Ironman event for the Neighborhood Association. We have run a good race, and we hope you'll be at the finish with us. So a little bit of history. As the Wren Heights development came across 10 acres of land along Salem Heights Avenue, and it grew in size, SWAN saw the need for safety enhancements and improvement of Salem Heights Avenue South. Salem Heights is designated as a collector street that is really a narrow rural road with many sight distance issues. The majority of the roadway is without sidewalks or other pedestrian improvements. This is similar to other streets in our neighborhood, but we decided to step up and work towards making Salem Heights Avenue a safer place to walk, bike, or drive, especially as increased traffic comes to the area. In order to find ways to enhance safety on Salem Heights, SWAN hosted community meetings, we sought neighbor input, and we worked with Salem City staff to gather ideas from the community. We looked at many ways to transform a hazardous roadway into a safer route. And if you will, this process looked to many like buying a pair of new shoes, with multiple friends assisting. Everyone had an opinion, and we had to keep shopping. So we looked at many styles, reviewed options, received lots of feedback from local residents and city staff selecting the style of roadway the majority of neighbors wanted to see, and one with a multi-use path following a meandering right-of-way has come to the top of our list. And in our efforts to create a safer street, we have created not only a potential design model for Salem Heights, not an engineering model, but just a model for Salem Heights Avenue South, but we've also created a model for cooperation and participation within the community. You'll hear from another person about the number of people who participated. And I believe the staff presentation that will follow later in this meeting will provide an opportunity or option to view the preferred neighborhood design. So it's been a long process, but through the efforts of many involved neighbors and supportive city staff, we believe we have arrived at a place where the Salem Heights Refinement Plan is ready to be included in the Salem Transportation Plan. I hope you agree with staff recommendations to move Salem Heights Avenue South and its associated safety enhancements into the Salem Transportation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Bernie.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Julie Curtis.
Hello, council members, mayor, and staff. My name is Julie Curtis, and I live in Ward 7. I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments tonight on the Salem Heights plan. My home is at the corner of Salem Heights and Holiday, just a few blocks south of Candelaria Elementary School. As Ron said, our neighborhood group pivoted from our initial concern over the Wren Heights development to working with the city on what have been long-standing safety concerns on Salem Heights. Ever since we moved there in 1994, school kids have had to walk through our driveway, which is fine, but because ours is probably the most unsafe corner along the street. There's no sidewalk on Salem Heights, and we're on a blind hill. I've always been concerned about kids as well as adults crossing Salem Heights in a spot where you literally cannot see traffic. So naturally, I was very pleased to get involved with this project. From the beginning, we sought to collect our neighbors' opinions on how to preserve our neighborhood character, as Ron said, while designing a safer street for us all who use it on a regular basis. Working with the city and our neighborhood association, we hosted meetings and open houses, sent surveys out to both inform and be informed by our neighbors. We walked the neighborhood and knocked on every single door to visit with residents and encouraged them to complete the survey so we knew what their thoughts were about this street. City staff were impressed by our high response rate, calling it robust and not typical. We also walked the street last summer with city employees who very helpfully pointed out many possibilities for improving Salem Heights. We looked at visibility, rights-of-way, the topography, trees, and many more issues. It was very, very informative. All of this work resulted in a strong and productive partnership with residents, the city, and our members. Its success, frankly, surprised us. It's our hope that this project will serve as a model for other neighborhood issues in Salem. Tonight, I want to especially thank Senior Transportation Planner Anthony Gamallo, who's over there in the corner, who has served as our go-to city employee throughout this more than 5-year project that spanned the pandemic. He was always responsive. He listened to our concerns and overall was just great to work with. I'll conclude by saying the reason this project has been a positive experience is because of the attitudes of city staff and of our citizens who live in the Salem Heights neighborhood. We all took a negative, more cars and fewer trees because of a housing development, and turned it into a positive that we all feel very good about will bring safety to this very difficult street. We're very proud of our collaborative work, and we thank you for listening. I was thinking earlier after what Ted said, after all these improvements are made, we all might have to buy new shoes because we'll be walking it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. Jen Fuji.
What do I push?
You're good. It's on.
Hi, my name is Jen Fuji. I do live at the corner of 6th and Salem Heights. And I was one of the kids that walked through Julie's driveway, although it was previous owner, actually, because I'm a little bit older. I'm not old. Anyways, I did participate in this somewhat, although I was unable to attend any of the public meetings. But I have a lot of concerns about this plan, mainly the right-of-way at the bottom of the hill. It's only 40 feet, and the plan that the preferred alternative is 48 feet. And I don't know if anybody knows about easements, but the way the preferred alternative is drawn is the road is not in the middle of the easement. Currently, the road is in the middle of the easement, so we're going to have to move the easement over 15 feet. Unfortunately, at the bottom of the hill, because it's a really old rural road, people are built like right on the corner there. And I would say that that is the most dangerous stretch of the hill. And unfortunately, when they built the light, people really like jam on the gas to make the light. So I live on Salem Heights. I listen to people go like 30, 40, 50 miles down the street. I am very concerned about public safety. There is a school bus stop right across the street on Salem Heights, and I'm very concerned about that. I walk my dog on Salem Heights. However, the preferred alternative I find to be an additional road on Salem Heights that we just don't have room for. A 10-foot wide multi-use path is frankly a road. And I really don't think that the city has enough resources to buy up all the easements or completely realign the road as is required in preferred alternative A. So I do believe that we really need to have a collaborative process here. I've worked in public planning before, and I appreciate Anthony's work. I've personally spoken to him. I feel like the solution here is the speed of the cars needs to be slowed down, and I've spoken to them about adding an additional stop sign at the corner of Wynola and the new development, because now we have new cars coming in right there, right below the site impingement at the hill. Because if you weren't there, if you haven't driven Salem Heights, there's a really steep hill, and so that's the main safety concern. It's not up by, I am concerned by Ron's house too and Julie's house, but frankly, it's further down the hill from them. But furthermore, I feel like this is a bigger concern about Salem growing. Further down past Liberty, that's multi-use housing and businesses and apartments. That was left off the plan. And I think it's because no one was really complaining about that, because we're talking about apartment complexes. But between Liberty and Commercial, there's a lot of pedestrian and bike paths. And I'm more concerned about that than the people that are coming to Salem from, who knows where to ride our streets for like one day. I'm very concerned about the pedestrians and the bikes in Salem, but I don't want us to overreach here in our planning. I want us to be realistic. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for your testimony. Noah Olson.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Noah Olson. I live at 3324 6th Avenue, which is right on the corner of 6th and Salem Heights. I would like to echo what was just expressed in terms of the main public safety concern I've identified in a couple of years of living on Salem Heights is the speed that people kind of accumulate coming down from about Crestview to down towards Liberty. At times, I know the plan identified at least a couple of instances of people making 70 going down that stretch of road, which seems insane to me, but at the same time, I totally believe it. I do have some concerns with the preferred alternative. I think that a better use of the city's funds would likely be to focus on prioritizing means to slow down traffic on Salem Heights Road, whether that's installation of some 3 or 4-way stops between Crestview and Liberty or other alternatives. I didn't see that addressed in the plan for Salem Heights Road, and so I just wish to register my concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Gabe Doherty. You can use the one right there. It's okay. Just hit that button for me and turn the green light on. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Hoy and members of the council. My name is Gabe Doherty for the record. I live at 3149 Savannah Avenue in the 8th Ward of Salem, Oregon. It is hard to deny the mounting costs of local government that local governments bear in providing the same public services each year. In fact, this body lamented the structural imbalance between revenues and expenses, and that reductions of services would be required for the city to adopt a balanced budget if an ordinance to raise revenue was not adopted or approved. Recognizing the need for new revenue, City Council narrowly passed Ordinance Bill number 12-23, but it is deeply flawed. First, revenue measures by local governments should, with few exceptions, always be referred to voters. Public services cannot reliably function without funding, but voters have a strong interest in choosing the services they want or need in their communities. After the election of council members, referrals of those measures to voters are the closest thing voters have in influencing those decisions by local governments. The council should have a significant degree of deference to count voters' wants and needs, and adopting a payroll tax despite its unpopularity was bewildering to me. Moreover, the council cannot deny the fact that voters will voluntarily elect to increase their tax burden to improve infrastructure and service. Bond measures for the Salem-Keizer School District and the city are two very recent examples. Local governments in Oregon are no stranger to referring revenue measures to voters. In Portland, Oregon, voters approved an arts tax. Multnomah County voters approved 2 local income taxes in 3 decades, excuse me. In Polk County, voters approved for a second time a public safety levy that funds virtually no other service except for the office of the sheriff. For reasons that are unclear, Salem followed the example in Eugene, Oregon, where an unsuccessful referendum petition followed the city council's adoption of a payroll tax in 2019. But public sentiment in Eugene seems to be eroding and suggests that new revenue should fund other services besides law enforcement. Second, the ordinance is vague. Section 30 provides that revenue collected by the city for the payroll tax shall only be used for community safety purposes and for the administration of the tax. This ambiguity lends itself to broad interpretations of what community safety purposes are and to whom they are provided. At least 6 unique services could fall under such an umbrella. Voters deserve to know what they are paying for and when the structural imbalances are as acute as the council found them to be. The administration of the tax is equally unclear. The council should have established a fund that is separate and distinct from the city's general fund to eliminate fungibility with other general fund revenues. Without a separate fund, the city cannot necessarily provide reports on the revenues collected and the expenditures recognized in the most transparent manner. Good governance depends on transparency, and voters demand it. Finally, the payroll tax was premature. I do not believe the city diligently evaluated what services could have been eliminated or severely curtailed. Reasonable people may disagree on which of those services is more valuable than the other, but unilaterally adopting a measure that borders on administratively impractical was not and is not the solution. Community safety is no doubt an important goal, but voters deserve to know how this new revenue will be divided in the city's annual budget discreetly, functionally, and programmatically. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes the public comment under item number 2. We are now on to the consent calendar. Councilor Stapleton.
I move the approval of the consent calendar with the exception of item 3.3B, pulled by Councilor Gwynn.
Second.
Moved by Stapleton, seconded by Gwynn. Councilor, to your motion.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Phillips. Did I say Gwynn? I was writing Gwynn for the poll, and so I said it out loud. Seconded by Phillips.
All right. The consent calendar today consists of item 3.1A, which is the July 10th, 2023 draft City Council minutes. Item 3.2A, the modification of certain fees related to parks and recreation, planning, and utility services. Item 3.3A, the intergovernmental agreement between the Housing Authority of the City of Salem and the City of Salem for administrative services. And item 3.3C, which is the recommended appointment to the Salem Public Library Advisory Board. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there further discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Gwynn. Aye. Councilor Gonzalez. Absent. Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney? Aye. Councilor Stapleton?
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka?
Aye.
Councilor Phillips?
Aye.
Mayor Hoy?
Aye, motion passes. All right, on to public hearings.
Salem City Council will now conduct a public hearing to consider an appeal of the May 10th, 2023 Planning Administrator's decision regarding development of a multifamily residential development located at 2100 Doaks Ferry Road Northwest. The criteria applicable is SRC 205.010D for the subdivision, SRC 200.025D for the urban growth preliminary declaration, SRC 220.005F3 for the Class 3 site plan review, SRC 250.005D2 for the Class 2 adjustment, SRC 808.045D for the tree variance, and SRC 225.005E1 for the Class 1 design review. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria which the person believes to apply to the decision. A failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue shall preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The hearing will be conducted with staff presentation first, followed by testimony from the following. The applicant's limited to 10 minutes. The appellant is limited to 10 minutes. The neighborhood association in the area is the appellant, so they are not entitled to an additional 5 minutes. However, all other individual parties or individuals are limited to 3 minutes. The applicant's rebuttal is limited to 5 minutes and is limited to matters which were introduced during the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that we have Jamie Donaldson here. If you'd hit that button and turn the microphone on and start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jamie Donaldson. I'm with the Planning Division, presenting before you tonight the appeal for the multifamily development proposal at the 2100 block of Doaks Ferry Road Northwest. I request that the presentation, staff report, and all testimony received be entered into the record. It's not going forward.
There you go.
Oh. The subject property is located in West Salem, north of Glen Creek Road, shown here on the larger vicinity map. The property abuts Orchard Heights Road Northwest to the south, which is a minor arterial street shown in blue, Doaks Ferry Road Northwest to the east, a major arterial shown in pink, and Landegard Drive Northwest, which is designated as a collector street in orange, and dead ends into the property on the west side. The subject property is split zoned RM2 multiple family residential, shown in orange, and MU2 mixed use 2, shown in purple. The proposal includes a subdivision to separate the two zones with development of the multifamily portion to the north. The subject property is approximately 37 acres in size, is currently vacant, and contains a parcel of land solely within its boundary housing a single family residence, which is not a part of this proposal. The full proposal submitted by the applicant requests a tentative subdivision plan approval to divide the 36.72 acre property into 6 lots with the request for alternative street standards, an urban growth area preliminary declaration to determine the public facilities required to serve the proposed development, a Class 3 site plan review and Class 1 design review for development of 436 units in 31 buildings across the northern 5 lots, with associated amenities and improvements including a residential clubhouse, recreation areas, parking, and landscaping. 4 Class 2 adjustments to increase the maximum height allowed for the residential clubhouse, eliminate the requirement to orient buildings toward the street with pedestrian access, reduce the minimum buildable width required along multiple streets, and to increase the maximum parking for the development site, as well as a tree regulation variance to remove significant trees throughout the 5 lots proposed for the development. I would also like to note that the 120-day state mandated decision deadline was extended by the applicant after the decision was issued to September 22nd, 2023, which was not included in the staff report before you. Here we've turned the map on its side so we can get a closer view of the site plan. The subdivision proposes to divide the property into 6 lots, separating the MU2 zoned portion to the south as Lot 6, where no development is proposed at this time. The remaining 5 lots in the RM2 zoned portion to the north are divided by the proposed streets for the multifamily development, which are the main focus for this application. Because the northern portion of the multifamily development is the focus of this application, the summary statement only noted the RM2 zone. Both zones of the property were called out in the decision, but because the majority of the application focuses on the development of this portion of the property, the proposal was only reviewed for the RM2 zoning that applied to the development. In addition, testimony received indicated there was a discrepancy in the acreage reported for the property versus the square footage of all 6 lots combined. This is due to the right-of-way dedication for the streets within the subdivision, which will be city streets and do not count towards the size of the property once it's divided. In addition to the tentative subdivision, the application also includes a Class 3 site plan review and Class 1 design review for the development of the 436 units in 31 buildings across the northern 5 lots, with the 4 Class 2 adjustments to design standards and a request to increase the maximum allowed parking for the development site, which was ultimately denied. The application also includes a tree variance request to remove 46 protected trees on site. Protected trees include significant trees, which are Oregon white oaks, greater than 20 inches in diameter at breast height, or DBH, or any other tree DBH of 30 inches or greater. And protected trees also include riparian trees, which is any tree that falls within a riparian corridor, which is 50 feet from the top of bank of a creek or waterway. As noted in the staff report, the applicant's initial request was to remove 53 significant trees, but in working with the applicant during the completeness review and through conditions of approval, staff was able to reduce that number and only approve removal of 42 significant trees. And I'll go into that analysis in just a minute. As you can see, the majority of the trees on site to be removed are located in central areas of the development. Therefore, because of the size of the trees and the large critical root zones and the significant topography and required grading for the site, designing a development that builds around these trees would still inflict damage beyond the 30% threshold that a tree could potentially withstand and still survive within its critical root zone. This means that trees located in setbacks or open space areas would endure the least disruption and have the greatest chance of survival, which is where staff has conditioned the removal of excess parking and the preservation of trees. And I'll also touch on that in a moment. The property is within the West Salem Neighborhood Association boundary. The neighborhood association voted to appeal this decision because they believe that their testimony submitted during the commenting period was not fully addressed in the decision, and conditions of approval seemed unenforceable or require third-party review, which are addressed in pages 4 through 6 of the staff report. However, it seems the biggest concerns in the appeals submitted are regarding the preservation of significant and riparian trees on site. So I will go into that analysis further. Both the West Salem Neighborhood Association and the Glen Gibson Creeks Watershed Council testimonies mentioned the trees proposed for removal due to the location of Building 29 in the southeast corner of the development, which is a great example of how staff work with the applicant during the completeness review process in an effort to save more trees. The image on the left was the first proposal, and the image on the right is after the redesign. Because there is still significant grading of the site, trees located more internal to the property prove more difficult to save. However, this is a good example of how we were still able to save a grove of trees closer to the proposed property line, where grading and construction would not threaten the survival of the trees. In areas where there are multiple trees that could potentially be saved and the applicant did not provide design changes, conditions of approval have been included to ensure those changes are made and the trees are preserved. The adjustment request to increase maximum parking was also denied in preference for saving additional trees. And some examples of conditions imposed on the property to save trees include conditions 49, 55, and 56. I've included pictures here that show how the trees near buildings 3 and 6, which are affected by adjacent proposed parking lot. These conditions ask to reduce the parking in these areas to save both significant and non-significant trees. Some final numbers after conditions of approval. 32 significant trees are designated for preservation, which is about 43% of all the significant trees on site. And a total of 100 trees are designated for between non-significant and significant, which would be 31% of the development site. For any other single-family subdivision with a tree conservation plan, 30% is the threshold to save. Willock Brook flows under Doaks Ferry and south on the development site, entering very close to where the new property line is proposed, with just a small portion in the southeast corner of the multifamily development, where you can clearly see it on the close-up picture on the right. Whoops. On further review, after receiving the Neighborhood Association's appeal, it was found that there was one riparian tree proposed for removal within the riparian zone, which was addressed in the staff report. However, after the staff report was issued, the applicant submitted a new grading plan to indicate preservation of the 18-inch madrona within the riparian zone of Willock Brook. Therefore, no riparian trees are proposed for removal. With the condition of approval to submit updated tree plans, the change to preserve this tree will be reflected. Staff has collaborated on all conditions of approval to ensure that the conditions can be met across all departments. Some of the conditions of approval include meeting minimum setback requirements, adding pedestrian connections and vehicle and pedestrian access easements, removal of excess parking, updated tree plans to meet all preservation conditions, planting of over 500 new trees on site to meet design standards, and replanting of a 2-to-1 ratio for any trees removed within required setbacks. Street improvements, including sidewalks and street trees, an open channel drainage easement for Willock Brook for maintenance, and TSP amendment scenarios if the TSP amendment would be approved or denied. Staff has worked diligently to establish 63 conditions of approval, which ensures a development that will ultimately meet all applicable standards. That is why staff recommends that council affirm the planning administrator's decision to approve the application with the requested adjustment to increase maximum parking denied and with the recommended conditions of approval. That concludes this presentation, and I'm available to help answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the appellant first, and then we'll go to the appellant first. I'm sorry, the applicant first. Applicant first, and then we'll go to the appellant, and then we'll go to questions for staff. So you have 10 minutes.
Yes.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is John Eld. I represent Titan Hill Property LLC. We are a big developer here in Salem. We are based in Salem. We are committed to providing a variety of housing options for the residents of Salem. We have several multifamily complexes throughout the city. We've done several single-family developments throughout the city, and we've also done several senior housing developments throughout the city. So we are based here, we live here, and we're committed to providing housing for the residents of this city. This site, we believe, is a great site due to its location and its proximity to schools for multifamily. You have 2 elementary schools, you have a middle school and a high school, all within walking distance, and this provides a great opportunity for the residents to be able to take advantage of those services. We really appreciate all the hard work that staff has put into this. It's a challenging application. It was a challenging site. The topography, as Jamie explained, has made it very difficult. But we really appreciate all the time and effort that staff has put into this and the 63 conditions of approval, and we hope that you will affirm that decision. I'm here with Natalie Janey from Multitech Engineering and Mark Grenz from Multitech Engineering, as well as Alan Sorum. I'm going to let Natalie speak to the technical aspects of the application and some of the concerns that the neighbors have brought up, but my whole team is here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Hoy, City Councilors. My name is Natalie Janney. I'm a civil engineer at Multitech Engineering. Our office is at 1155 13th Street Southeast here in Salem. As John mentioned, I'm going to be discussing the layout and how we got to this and how as it relates to some of the public comment that we received. I first wanted to start off, I know there were comments submitted regarding the access to the Dalkey property, which is that center property right here, mouse work. There's an existing public easement that provides access to their property. We're not proposing to change that, and we'll work with them during construction to make sure they have continued access to their property. The City of Salem Development Code requires that streets be extended to neighboring properties. On this project, that means extending A Street from Doaks Ferry to the property to the west, extending Landegard to the north, providing a stub street to the west and another stub street to the east. Landegard is currently shown in the TSP to be a collector street for this area. City staff and our team are in agreement that A Street would be a better choice for the collector street, one of the main reasons being that Landegard has existing single-family homes along it, and while the right-of-way is there, the homes along Landegard would have a lot of landscaping that would have to be removed to widen the street and add the necessary curb and sidewalk, not to mention it would encourage more traffic to travel this way. Because of this, A Street is being designed as a collector street. Intersections, according to design standards, have to be designed fairly flat in order to meet ADA requirements. And there's also requirements in city standards dictating a maximum slope that you can have a street in order for fire access. And so these limit how quickly we can get a street up. And so for this street in this area particularly, where there's a great amount of grading that needs to be done. There were some comments submitted by the neighborhood association disputing that we would need this great of a slope. I'm going to discuss that now. So as you can see in this profile, it takes over 1,000 feet for this street to catch, and that's with the additional length that we achieve by curving this road that you can see up top, how it kind of has some curve. We needed the extra length. And the location of this street in its intersection with Doaks Ferry was chosen because it matched the existing topography the quickest. So, however, designing A Street at 8% would result in the street being an additional 6 feet into the ground for a total of 40 feet below the ground surface at its maximum. As you can see from this profile, there's a lot of dirt that needs to be removed for this roadway, and this grading extends out from the streets and onto the site. You can see the driveway to the parking lot encircled here in orange. It has this curve to it. We need to have this curve in order to get the extra length, in order to get the 7 feet in grade that we need to gain from the street into the parking lot. You can also see up here, this is a ADA switchback, although it's hard to see. This is required in order to get accessibility onto the site from the street. And then within the apartment site, we have required ADA accessibility requirements and accessible routes throughout. So grading is really challenging on a site with this much topography. And I meant to mention this at the beginning, but this site has 110 feet of fall from the top to the bottom. So there's significant topography on this site. Now imagine if this were 6 feet lower. So there'd be 6 more of these contour lines in there, and that driveway would need to climb 13 feet instead of 7. We have gone through a lot of revisions, as Jamie mentioned, working with staff through this process. One of the revisions we've not yet made to the staff report, or to our site plan, is the moving of this stub street C to the northern property line. This is condition 22. Staff wants the street moved because they believe the alignment as proposed will interfere with a house that's on this eastern property. It's east, but it's on the bottom of the screen here. However, it is our belief that 1, the house would likely be demolished when this property develops. 2, if the house were to be retained, a street could be designed to meander around the house. And 3, that the street will never be able to connect down to Doaks Ferry due to the topography. We can make the change, but we wanted to bring it to council's attention that moving it and matching condition 22 would result in the loss of 2 additional significant white oak trees, which is why we hadn't made this change yet. Originally, when we requested additional parking, it was in order to address some concerns that we heard going through the zone change process. As Jamie mentioned, through the application process, we've worked with staff to preserve more trees. We've removed parking, reshaped drive aisles, moved facilities, moved buildings to preserve as many trees as we can. This is the northern property. This is one of the examples that Jamie gave on Building 6. This is the new proposal. So we've removed some parking in order to save these trees. This is another example. This is on the north property line on the west side of Landegard. We made the storage buildings much shallower, and we will need to construct a retaining wall right here in order to preserve these trees. And then finally, Jamie mentioned this too, we changed the stormwater facility near Willock Brook on the southeast side of the project to ensure that we aren't impacting the riparian area or the madrona tree. I know that there have been concerns regarding the project's stormwater impact on Willock Brook. At this stage in the process, we've evaluated the proposed system and are comfortable from a feasibility standpoint. We are confident that the city will provide a thorough review of the stormwater design when we get to the construction phase. The stormwater facilities proposed will be using green stormwater infrastructure to treat all the runoff for the water quality event per the City of Salem's design standards. GSI facilities use a combination of physical and biological removal processes to remove suspended solids, heavy metals, and nutrients from the runoff. In addition, the act of flowing through the growing media should help cool the water. The proposed facility will be a combined facility to control water quality and quantity. In my experience, that means that this facility will be able to infiltrate the water through the growing media very quickly, which will also help treat for temperature as well. Larger events will be detained to their pre-developed runoff rates and will flow into a public conveyance system as the water currently does. If there are any more questions about the stormwater, I'm happy to answer those, as well as any other questions that you might have regarding any of the site engineering. Thanks for staying awake.
Thank you. We'll go now to the appellant, and then we'll come back for questions. Hit that button for me, please. Turn it on. There you go.
Mayor, before I start, may I reserve 2 minutes from my time to the end of public testimony?
No, the clock's starting now, and
right.
we'll have an opportunity for questions afterwards.
All right. Mayor Hoy and City Council members, we offered initial testimony in Exhibit 1 showing 51 specific examples of questions not addressed in the May 10th Planning Administrator's findings.
I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, did you introduce yourself?
Oh, excuse me, sir.
Thank you.
Steve Anderson, West Salem Neighborhood Association Land Use Chair, Ward 8.
Thank you.
Of those, we demonstrated that the applicant has not met their burden of proof. Tonight, we will offer specific examples supporting our earlier statements. Example 1. According to the July 24, 2003 staff report addressing the West Salem Neighborhood Association's appeal, staff said the applicant provided some of the missing information on January 26, 2023, and requested the application be deemed complete under state code, therefore requiring staff to issue a decision without all the information requested. That's an important statement. Because of this, staff was required by state law to issue a decision within the time period and did not allow for many decisions. On May 10th, the Planning Administrator's approval decision provided the following example of this effect of not having time to review or all the adequate information supplied. Under SRC Chapter 71 Stormwater Findings, the Public Works Department indicated that the applicant submitted an incomplete preliminary stormwater report. They go on to say that it was not clear from the information submitted whether or not the proposed design complied with SRC Chapter 71. In addition, the applicant's tentative plan showed a new 30-foot deep stormwater main in Landegard Drive that does not appear feasible to construct or maintain. The lack of design at this stage may require modifications to the land use decision once the completed design is reviewed. It is clear from this evidence and report by Public Works that 1, the missing evidence in the record supported the decision was not complete and not complying with a revised code. 2, there is evidence in the decision document stated by staff of not complying with the code. The application was approved with knowledge by staff of it not meeting Salem revised code. And 4th, staff's suggestion for a later modification to this land use decision places the city in a Goal 1 violation position. Example 2. Appendix A of our attached testimony documents the incomplete tree inventory for the Titan Hill subdivision, including white oak trees along Doaks Ferry missing on the tax lot 400 evaluation. Evidence is provided therein of multiple failures to comply with the Salem Revised Code. Clear there is evidence in Appendix A that the applicant has not compiled an applicable standards. They've not compiled in their tree survey and shown that they comply with the applicable standards of the RM2 and MUM2 zones. There is no report from a professional arborist in this application. There is no evidence that the SRC Chapter 808 intent to preserve significant trees has been addressed. I call your attention to the phrase intent to preserve. The intent must be demonstrated before any attempts at a variance is undertaken. The Watershed Council testimony before you tonight demonstrates that the applicant's intent to preserve and comply with the code does not adequately address the variance requirements in the code. The applicant's starting point was placing the maximum number of dwelling units. Every time on their plan drawings a dwelling unit conflicted with a tree, the tree was to be removed. Maximizing the number of dwelling units on site appeared to be the priority, not the intent to preserve. Please listen carefully to and consider the Watershed Council testimony tonight. Had the methodologies you described there been employed, the intent to preserve significant trees would have been the focus before seeking a variance. Note the applicant provides no economic analysis supporting their case, and I expect had they proceeded with the alternative approach, one would see a greater economic return than what has been proposed. Example 3. The subdivision requirements contained in SRC 20510 D6 are not complied with. That is, the tentative subdivision plan provides safe and convenient bicycle and pedestrian access from within the subdivision to adjacent residential areas and transit stops and to neighborhood activity centers within 1/2 mile of the development. The applicant here supplied inaccurate information. This led staff to inaccurately address the detailed requirements of the code and the failure to meet the intent of the ordinance. This is all documented in Appendix B to our testimony.
Mr. Anderson, your microphone went off.
Oh, there, better.
Thank you.
Okay, example 4. Thank you, Mayor. You will have testimony tonight from neighbors about the impacts of this development and what it will have on their properties and future development. This comes under SRC 20510 D2. The record does not support compliance here. Appendix C provides additional examples where this compliance has not been achieved. So in summary, this application with its 63 conditions is very complex. The applicant has done their best to meet the requirements of the code, but they have provided inaccurate information, they have left missing information out, they have failed to answer staff's request for additional information, all resulting in errors and omissions and failure to meet their burden of proof. We have presented documented evidence that you should not recommend the approval of this application. Evidence shows that the Titan Hill development does not comply with the Salem Revised Code. Evidence has been presented that the applicant will not nor cannot comply with conditions of approval. In fact, the Public Works testimony in the application that I cited earlier documents staff's notification of that, and they're including that in the record. They have not met their burden of proof. Therefore, we ask the City Council not approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We'll now go to public testimony. We'll start with Robert Dalkey. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes if you'd introduce yourself and your address for the record.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to my testimony. My name is Robert Dalkey. I am a 24-year retired combat veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan, and I reside in Ward 8. I appear before you today with heartfelt concerns about the city staff's approval of the development application for the 2100 block of Doaks Ferry Road. The issue I want to address is the preservation of our cherished natural resources, particularly the significant white oak trees that grace our city. The ecological significance of these magnificent trees cannot be overstated. They are not mere fixtures of our landscape. They play an integral role in our ecological system, providing shelter and sustaining for a diverse array of wildlife. They uphold biodiversity and maintain the delicate balance of nature within our urban environment. I raise a critical question. How has the city staff evaluated the intent to preserve significant trees as declared in SRC Chapter 808? It is evident that both the applicant and the staff have failed to meet their burden of proof in addressing concerns raised by the Glen Gibson Watershed Council and the West Salem Neighborhood Association. Despite claiming an undue burden in planning the development around significant trees, it is essential to acknowledge that the applicant was fully aware of the trees when they purchased this property and proceeded with development nonetheless. As we deliberate on the proposed development, we must also recognize the invaluable environmental benefits these trees offer. Their capacity to absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen contributes to cleaner air, while their generous shade and cooling effects combat the urban heat island effect, making Salem a more sustainable and pleasant place to live. Our commitment to uphold the visions set forth in SRC Chapter 808 is of utmost importance. These provisions place great emphasis on preserving our natural heritage. Allowing the removal of these significant white oak trees risks deviating from the principles that safeguard the environment and the integrity of our city's green spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Katie Chiancetta? Chanchetta. We will bring a microphone to you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor.
Well, I don't think that's on. Or maybe hold it really close. Try it one more time.
Good evening, Mayor.
Nope. Try it again, Dan.
Check, check. Check, check.
There we go. Let's try that again.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for taking time to listen to my testimony. I think this is a prime example of what happens when a person enters a room in a wheelchair. It's very difficult for me to get to the podium to speak, and then the technology fails again when I try to speak. And this also relates to this new neighborhood. I do appreciate all the things that you were putting in there for accessibility, absolutely. I can see within your diagrams that the neighborhood itself will have that accessibility. My concern is that idea of people in that development being able to go outside of that development. One of the crossings is proposed from Landegard, crossing Orchard Heights Road to the high school to get to one of the parks. Orchard Heights Road, the speed limit in that area is 45 miles an hour, and I cannot cross a street in enough time to not be smashed by a car. So I'm not sure what you're going to do to address that, but that is going to be a very important part of your plan. Another very important part of your plan is the intersection of Doaks Ferry Road and Orchard Heights Road. I have navigated that on my power wheelchair. It feels like a Disneyland ride. That is the worst curb cut I have ever experienced. I can't do it in my manual chair. I would tip over backwards and smash my head open. So that also needs to be addressed. If you want the people in that development to be able to leave that development by foot or by manual wheelchair, corrections must be made. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Could you do me a favor and just be sure and introduce yourself and your address for the record?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm
It's all
Katie
right.
Chanchetta, and I live in Ward 8 on Firefly Court.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for the technology failure. Next, we have Christy Dalkey.
Go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Christy Dalkey. I live in Ward 8 on Landegard Drive, the Pentagon-shaped that is clearly says not part of this parcel, that we have been the property owners there for the last 6 years, and we are obviously directly affected by this development. I stand before you to raise an important questions regarding the applicant's compliance with city development codes and conditions set forth in the plan approval process. After thoroughly examining the application and the relevant files, I believe the burden of proof to demonstrate adherence to these conditions has not been adequately met. The original filing requested for our easement road and the only access to our property to be vacated and moved. You'll notice on the current plan we will drive through a parking lot to get to our home. While staff addressed this request in conditions 9 and 10, I would like the record to reflect that neither I nor my husband have been contacted by the developer or Multitech regarding this filing, nor have we granted permission for them to vacate our easement on tax lot 1100. It raises a significant concern as it directly impacts our property rights and accesses, again, to our home. Secondly, condition 10 specifies that the applicant not eliminate the easement providing access and must demonstrate alternative access during construction. We have not been presented with any viable alternative access plans, and the developer's lack of communication and failure to demonstrate how they intend to provide uninterrupted access to our home during construction raises serious doubts about their compliance with this condition. I'm also deeply concerned about the potential impacts of this development on our rights for reasonable future use of this property as protected by the Salem Revised Code Section 64-090030. The proposed apartment complex, if approved in its current form, even with the staff's conditions, could have adverse effects on the value and enjoyment of our property. Besides increased noise, traffic congestion, and reduced privacy due to the apartment complex's close proximity, as well as the development's height and layout with significant impact to natural light, solar access, the orientation of future structures. It goes on and on. I don't know who's going to want this property in the future for development or investment purposes or to live. In addition to the previously mentioned concerns, I want to draw attention to the fact that our water main is situated within the developer's property, and unfortunately, again, there has been no indication from the developer about how they plan to move this water main while ensuring that we and other neighbors have uninterrupted access to clean water. It is of the utmost importance that the burden of proof falls on the developer to demonstrate a comprehensive plan for relocating the water main, and we have assurance of this clean water. In conclusion, I just want to say we're not opposed to development. It's imperative that we ensure
I'm sorry,
that we
but
have
your time has
adherence to city
expired.
codes. That's what they're there for. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Aaron Felton.
Mr. Mayor, members of the,
You know, one more time. There you go.
All right. Yay, technology. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you and speak. By the way, I live in Ward 8, and I live on Landegard with my neighbors who have just spoken, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before the council as a citizen and neighbor, and maybe just for a moment give some sense of how large this project is. I know my West Salem councilors and probably all councilors have driven Orchard Heights to get a sense. This is larger. If you know the Acero apartments, that's a large complex, right? If you think about it, this is larger than that. This is over 100 units larger than that. So you can conceive this is probably one of the largest apartment projects ever to go into West Salem. So just let that settle in for a moment. And they're going to put that proposed right in a little tiny neighborhood area on Landegard. So my concerns are set forth in the appellant, in conditions 5 and 7. I'm concerned about the proposed water main, whether we're going to be able to have access to that. I'm concerned about condition number 7. I have questions about that, whether or not who's going to pay for that, because the proposal says extend that out to the adjoining neighborhoods. I have questions. Who is going to pay for that? Is Bancroft bonding going to be allowed for that? We just don't know. That's never been discussed with us. The developer hasn't discussed that with us. We have not had conversations with city staff about the future of that. Also in the proposal, or in the decision rather, there is a question about improving Landegard as it is, whether it's going to be improved to public, to city standards or not. It is an unknown for us what's going to happen in the future. We just don't know. I was really thrilled to hear Mr. Ickes, Mr. Burney, and the group from Salem Heights talking about the collaboration they've had with city staff. We would like to have similar collaboration so we could get some knowns about that right now. It's just an unknown about critical issues that haven't been discussed with us about what's going to happen to our street if this is approved. So I would urge council right now to tonight, or when you make this decision, either to deny the application or defer it till some of these questions are answered, because we just don't know. We haven't had those conversations, and we've been doing this for about 2 years now. 2 years ago, we met with one of our neighbors in the backyard with the West Salem Neighborhood Association to talk about this. We would like to have more conversations about this in terms of what's going to happen next. Because honestly, the Dalkeys don't know what's going to happen to their property. I don't know what's going to happen to my property in terms of whether I'm going to have to pay for a new sewer connection. And I feel like I should know going forward what that's going to mean. So again, Mr. Mayor, councilors, I thank you for your attention, but I agree with the comments that have come before in terms of this simply is not a fully thought out plan at this point, even though I know a lot of work has happened thus far. I thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for your testimony. Penny Ryan? All right. Thank you. Ron Rodahanel? If you'd introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good evening. I am Ronald Roadhamel, 2488 Emerald Drive Northwest, and with my wife Mary Gaines own a Polk County tree farm where we have resided for over 30 years. But we share a common boundary with a proposed development over 600 linear feet, our south boundary, or the development's north boundary. And we understand the need of the city to provide additional rental housing units completely, and want to be good neighbors. I am a civil engineer in Oregon and own a consulting business. The issue of appeal really concerns the preservation of large oak trees, more than a dozen along our common boundary line, several over 30 inches in diameter, and all of them should be preserved, not just some. Planning staff report to council tonight states on page 5 that no other design alternatives are found that will save trees. I disagree. These may be accomplished by minor revision to the setback of grading limits and construction of small segmented concrete block retaining walls, very common to protect the oak trees. Many have since were growing before Europeans ever lived nearby. Additional efforts are feasible and must be made to preserve these oak trees as required by Section 808 of the Code. Titan's development can proceed with minor adjustments, and resolution of this issue is a win-win situation for both the Titan Hill development and adjacent neighbors, and within the ability of council to require additional actions. Thank you for my comments. Review of my comments. I appreciate that. And Jamie did a very good job and thorough and very responsive. I want to tell you that she's done a lot of work too. So,
thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mike Freitas.
Mayor Hoy and City Councilors. Hello, for those who do not know me. I am Michael Freitas. I'm the West Salem Neighborhood Chair. And I'm here tonight to discuss the Titan Hill Development Plan. There has been written testimonies on both sides and people discussing the issues tonight. It is my opinion there has been enough questions raised on the legality of the issues that we cannot just move this plan forward at this time without further discussion and review. I respectfully ask that all of you act as jurors and send this back to the planning department and instruct them to meet with all parties and discuss each of these issues before returning to this body. I would recommend a formal meeting with all parties to discuss each issue and allow a constructive approach in resolving these issues. As I close, I would like to remind all of you that your task tonight is not to judge whether this project is good or bad or the appropriate project for West Salem. Your duty tonight is to judge whether the applicant fully met the burden of proof outlined in Oregon land use laws required by Council Rule 19. Thank you for taking time to listening to my neighbors and myself, and I'm glad you're all open to all conversations. Thank you again for listening.
Thank you for your testimony. Ken Beerley.
Thank you very much, Councilors, Mayor Hoy. My name is Ken Beerley. I'm chair of the Glen Gibson Creek Watershed Council, reside at 2308 Ptarmigan Street, Northwest in Ward 8. I have a master's degree in botany, and I've been practicing ecologist for 45 years, but I've heard from an engineer, I've heard from a veteran who've basically made my case. The Watershed Council has participated with the West Salem neighborhood in providing comments on the proposed project on Doaks Ferry Road. We focused on the aspects of the project that affect the functions of the watershed. The staff has considered our comments and have reduced the impact by a small amount through the city-applied conditions. And we focused our most recent comments in a letter dated June 20th, sorry, we haven't gotten to June 30th yet, 2023, so it should be in your packet. The Watershed Council recognizes the right of the developer and the landowner to develop under the comprehensive plan, zoning designation, and development codes within the city of Salem. We also recognize that there is a balance of competing goals for housing, for the environmental conservation, and for neighborhood livability. And it's kind of your job to balance those. These are competing goals that the city of Salem has adopted as policy. The zoning of the 24.5 acre property allows for construction of between 15 and 31 dwelling units per acre. That's 368 to 761 units. The proposal before you is to approve 436 dwelling units on the 24.5 acres. In a way, the Watershed Council is playing the Lorax. We're speaking for the trees. The proposal to remove 42 significant trees includes at least 3 Oregon white oaks with diameters between 50 and 66 inches. These trees were here before Europeans were here. Our argument with the proposal is the lack of balance between development interest and environmental and neighborhood interests. There is a clear scientific evidence that mature trees have a significantly greater effect on carbon sequestration, water quality protection, heat island reduction, and diverse wildlife habitat values than any plantings to replace them. By allowing the removal of 42 significant trees from the city is demonstrating that the developer's housing goals take precedence over other goals that the city has. So as I have 14 seconds left, I think it's important specifically for this project that the council recognizes that there is a balancing among the competing goals that the city has, and we would urge
Thank you, Mr. Beerley. I apologize, but your time's expired.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. E.M. Easterly.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. E.M. Easterly, Ward 8.
I ask that the approval of the Titan Hill project be denied or suspended until the application contains the complete and required SRC 205.030A boundary information. Specifically, subsections of the Salem Revised Code require the applicant to identify and submit, quote, the boundaries, dimensions, and area of each proposed lot or parcel, and the location and width and names of all existing streets abutting the perimeter of the subject property, unquote. The applicant's submissions do not include all the above cited information, and contrary to the planning administrator's May 10th approval decision, the Titan Hill project does not meet the requirements of SRC 205.030A 4 and 5. Missing information and conflicting data undermine the application. Distant measurements change without explanation between the council-approved 2021 zone change map and the subdivision development application map submitted in 2023. The submitted graphics show no survey monuments. Accurate roadway center lines and widths are absent. Last Friday, I submitted 24 pages in 5 documents detailing the applicant's failure to comply with Salem subdivision application requirements. Please, I ask you, no, I ask you to think yourselves. Did the applicant comply with all the city submission requirements? Did city staff, in an effort to support a complex application, skip over the requirements of SRC 205.030A? These questions are neither nitpicking nor trivial. They focus on the Titan Hill applicant's legal obligation to conform to the Salem Revised Code standards and criteria. I welcome your questions and ask that the hearing be held open so both the applicant and council members can review all of the evidence submitted. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes the list of folks who have signed up. Is there anybody who didn't get a chance to sign up? Did you want to testify? Yes, come on up to the microphone. Please introduce yourself for the record and your address.
Push the green button.
Green button's on, you're good to go.
Yes, I didn't mean to do this, but
please introduce
since
yourself,
you
sir.
asked, I'm Robert Chandler. I live in Ward 8, which I found out tonight. I live about a half a mile from this intersection, from Orchard Heights and Doaks Ferry, and I see dozens of young people walking on Doaks Ferry headed north on the west side of the street, and I have not personally seen any of them hit by a car yet. But I am worried that that will happen. Between bicycles and pedestrians, it's pretty tricky. And if I understand what's going on, there are going to be probably thousands of additional people in that area with the number of units we're looking at and the household. So one of the things for the council to make sure is that the plan has enough road adaptation and change to make it safe for those young people. Please, please.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else who wanted to testify? All right. Councilor Stapleton.
I'm just wondering if we can take a little break before we go into questions.
We can. We actually have applicant rebuttal first. Can we do that and then do the break?
Sounds great. Thanks.
You bet. We'll go to applicant rebuttal. They have 5 minutes, and then we'll go to a break, and then we'll go to questions. Be sure and hit that button for me and introduce yourself again for the record, please.
Good evening, Alan Sorum, for the record, attorney for the applicant. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify before you tonight. It's good to be back. Just going to quick go through some of the issues that we heard this evening. I think staff did a good job of listening to the initial comments and getting out in front of those issues, so I will be quick. Staff was correct in noting there's no procedural error regarding the issue where the RM2 zone was not identified in a summary. It was identified in all the other applicants' documents and in other notice materials, so there's no substantial prejudice to any procedural right. I want to talk a little bit about the burden of proof. Much was made out of a couple of sentences in a 136-page staff report regarding the back and forth and completeness review. I think those words are taken out of context, and it's not appropriate to characterize that the planning administrator approved an application for which there's not substantial evidence in the record. So through the completeness review, there were design modifications going back and forth between the applicant and staff, and eventually we asked for that to be closed and move on to the next phase. But as to the stormwater issue, there was adequate evidence in the record. We don't go through in site plan review and try to demonstrate full engineering or anything in those lines. We're only trying to demonstrate that adequate facilities can be provided to the subject property. So this is a kind of a conceptual review. If you kind of think back to a time in 2008, we used to not have site plan review. All of this was being done through building code review and engineering review. So the purpose of site plan review was not to front load engineering review and to demonstrate complete conformance with all engineering standards at this early time. What it was able to, the purpose of site plan review was just to demonstrate, could you feasibly develop the property and provide adequate services? And so we still have to go through building permit review and engineering review, and that is how the system's supposed to work. So there is no issue there. There were a number of comments regarding the application didn't prove that it was consistent with the purpose of the tree preservation code. The purpose statements within the UDC are not criterion themselves. So we have an approval. It's not the place for the the city council, that is, to reverse or remand a planning administrator's decision based upon anything other than the mandatory approval criterion. So the code sections that were cited by Mr. E.M. Easterly, those go to application completeness criterion. Those can be modified, waived by the planning administrator through the completeness review period. They are not in themselves approval criterion. So they're not a basis for this body to go ahead and remand or reverse a decision. Similarly, as I said, the purpose statements. One thing I think it's important to understand is where we've come from. So this has been a long process. This property was part of a zone change. If you kind of go and you look at the acreage of the property, it's close to 25 acres with a maximum density of 31 units per acre. That would put you at close to 750 units. During the zone change application process, a trip cap was put on. Cap of the number of units, we brought that down to 500 units. Now the proposal's for 436. So as council is weighing whether or not all the necessary design modifications were provided, maybe we could save another tree or two. Please understand how many units we've already lost through this process with the purpose of preserving the trees, which is a noble goal. It's a goal that this body adopted through its preservation ordinance in a legislative manner, but it's not the only purpose. It's not the only goal or job of the city or consideration to take into account when we're viewing all the evidence for site plan review. Staff noted that preserving the trees has the best bang for the buck if we preserve them in the open spaces and the setback areas. Lots of design modifications occurred, and that's where we ended up. So thank you very much for your time. We do have folks from the engineering team and myself and the applicant here for questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We will take a 5-minute break. All right, thank you everybody for being timely to return to your seats. We will resume with questions for staff. So now is your opportunity to ask questions for staff on anything you'd like to ask about. Councilor Varney.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hoy. I first of all wanted to say how much I really truly appreciate all the time, all the hours, all the work staff put into trying to get this application to conform. I mean, there's a lot. 63 conditions is a lot. So that being said, I'm just curious, so folks understand, what is the purpose of the conditions? What purpose do they serve?
The conditions are to ensure that they do meet the code where it might be missing. So for instance, if they weren't meeting setbacks, there's a condition to meet that when they come in for development permits. And if there's something that we, wanted to ensure that we save more trees, those kinds of conditions have been in place too.
Sure.
Okay, what happens if a condition cannot be, how do I explain this? Down the road, a condition can't be met, then what happens?
Typically, we'll work with them to make sure they can meet it, but if there's something that needs to be changed, they can apply for a modification to the application, and we would review it again with that change if it's a substantial change.
Okay, and who reviews it?
It would be a land use application, so planning would review it again, Public Works, all the departments.
Okay, but it doesn't come back before us or anything?
If it was to get appealed for some reason. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions? Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you. I am just wondering about the process because I'm not a developer, I'm not a planner. And so they were talking about the process of review, the site plan review, and then subsequently construction engineering, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a set of plans before us now. How many more reviews are there to go through in this process? And how likely is it that these plans are going to change any kind of substantial way?
For this kind of application, because it has a subdivision with it, there will be reviews prior to platting that's done through Public Works with the survey department to make sure they get all the appropriate measurements. Any of the easement situations they have to work out with the property owner in the middle would be worked out at that time. So there could be some changes with that, but generally, unless it wouldn't be a substantial change. And then you have to then it'll come back around for grading permits, building permits. During grading is when we'll likely check trees and make sure protection measures are in place. And then they move forward with development permits. So there's a lot of different processes, especially with the different kinds of applications that are involved.
And a couple more here. I'm really confused about well, I'm not confused. I don't know the word I want to use, so I won't use any. I have some questions about the 120 days.
Okay.
And how it works for this body to approve something before all of the information is provided. And I know that that is a state law that we have to do that. How close are we to that 120 days? And how does that make sense to like the rational brain? Like I'm trying to make a decision about something that's really important for this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I don't have all the information. So can you help me understand how that's supposed to work?
So the 120 days is for the land use decision. That doesn't involve all the other permits and things that will come along the way. So their 120 days has been extended to September 22nd. So there is still some time here if we need to come back to review or add a condition of some kind.
Okay.
And that's just for the land use process. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Maybe happy to.
Yeah.
Hi, Lisa Anderson Ogilvie, your planning administrator. Jamie's right. We have 120 days from when the application's deemed complete. In this case, the applicant asked us to deem it complete and said they've provided all the information they wanted to provide and went through the public process, and we added conditions of approval. You have time to not decide tonight and have deliberations at your next meeting and then adopt an order after that, and we will comply with the 120 days. I think it's important to separate that from some aspects of the application which are intended to be preliminary at land use. Examples, utilities, which I think the applicant talked about. They don't traditionally do a full utility plan. They show how they think utilities could work. Same with like water, stormwater, et cetera. And that's intended to be the process through land use. So we're looking at, in this case, how's the land going to be subdivided? How's it going to be served? Can it be served? For example, they showed water, and we have a condition that says provide water. That might, through full engineering, be in a slightly different location, for example, than what they're showing, but still meet our city code. So some of that is a trade-off between how much money do they put into designing the site before we decide that they even have the right layout, right? Or that they have the right density and that kind of thing. So we require preliminary grading plans, preliminary utility plans. And this goes back to the question Councilor Varney had on conditions. All the conditions have to be related to the approval criteria. Some of them are things the applicant is meeting. For example, we say build a street through here to this standard, and that is what their plans show. So it's just for us to tell them, yes, this is a requirement. You're showing it. Do it. You have to do it at the end. And then some of it are things that they'll need to adjust their plan. For example, there's some spots where the setbacks aren't correct. They'll need to adjust that. Or we have conditions to, reconfigure the parking lot to save some of the trees. So in some ways, the plans will change around the edges for those kinds of things, but it won't be a wholesale change in the plan. If they're going to propose or need to propose a larger change, for example, where access comes from, density, something like that, they would have to go back through the process again, as Jamie explained.
Thank you. Follow-up question on that would be, how is the surrounding community or the neighborhood association included in that, or are they included in those conversations further down the road as these things are kind of worked out in the process?
So the rest of it's not a public process. Okay. So after this, to say if it was affirmed, as Jamie mentioned, there'd be numerous permits and reviews that they go through, which are generally technical. They're not discretionary in that we need to involve the public in a land use type application. They'll do public construction plans, and Public Works will review all of their public facilities that they're going to build to our design standards, and that's when they'll really get into that engineering. That's not a public process. We're not looking for comments on what kind of standards we're going to accept for our sewer system, for example. The same with a building permit. Although people can view it on our portal and see it's going through the process, we're not asking for comments on a building permit review. But through all of those applications, the conditions of approval from land use are carried through. So there's planners, there's public works staff, fire staff that are reviewing all those applications and ensuring that the conditions are met at each stage, depending on what condition is applicable at that time. I know there was a comment that conditions are maybe unenforceable, but we do in fact apply all the conditions and enforce them throughout all of the permits. That's the first thing we do when we get any kind of permit in, is look at the conditions of approval and make sure that they're meeting those conditions. And if not, send the plans back until they get there.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for right now.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I actually have a question that it's more of a detail rather than a process question. A couple of them. One of the members of the public testified that they were going to have to access their property via a parking lot. Is that true? And does that really meet our standard?
Maybe Jamie should bring the plan back up. So the Dalke's property is shown as the not a part, and they do have an easement, and the plan is for them to continue, I believe, to have access in that same location. I'm sure the applicant can speak to it, but it does show parking off of that easement on the applicant's property.
Can we see that?
Yeah. Let's see. I see somebody scrolling, and they're doing things. So I'll just wait a second.
Okay, we don't have it shared though.
Yeah, we're going to get it shared in just a second, and then I'll get it to the right slide. I think just the site plan to show. Yeah, he's pulling it up, Jamie. It's almost there. Here we go. Oh, yes. This person has also found the correct slide. So do you want to be a planner? We're hiring. So Jamie, do you want to come? Okay, I'll do it here. So yeah, let me get to the site plan itself, actually. Can I take control? Oh, we're taking control. Jamie's telling him what to do. Yep, here we go. Yes. So, and this is tilted to the right, so north is to the right. And if I can take the mouse here, not apart, there, yes. So right there is there, you can kind of see there's a dash line. That's their current access, and they're proposing that some of the parking spaces will be on their property outside of the access.
I'm sorry, could you highlight that again? I didn't follow what you just pointed out there.
So where the label says Landegard is
Yeah.
where my mouse is maybe in theory gonna go. Oh. Here we go.
Okay.
This right here. So as you come north up Landegard, the road ends today right there, and they have I think it's a gravel drive off of there.
So that's currently their driveway, and
Yes.
that's an easement, not their property.
It's an easement, yes.
Okay.
And I think that would be a great question to direct to the applicant. The city's not involved in kind of negotiation of private easements.
Okay.
We put a condition that this house still needs to have access in the future. And so that's really for the applicants to work out if that moves, if it's the same, et cetera. It's not really for the city to be involved in.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant. While I still have you though, one of the people who testified had questions about conditions 5 and 7 and who pays for those? Who pays for those?
The applicant? I don't know what conditions 5 and 7 are. Everyone's logging into their laptops.
I believe it was Mr. Felton, and he referenced numbers. I wrote down 5 and 7 and wanted to know who pays.
Brian Martin, Public Works Director. The applicant would pay for those.
The applicant
would pay for those. Yeah, they do not extend down Landegard, where Mr. Felton and his neighbors had question.
So the applicant pays for conditions 5 and 7.
Yes.
And really, if I'm correct, they pay for all the conditions, right? These are conditions on the applicant.
Yeah, some things are oversized, and if something is oversized, there's an SDC component where they get reimbursed SDC fees. I'm not sure that 5 or 7 meet that criteria.
Thank you. Are there other questions for staff? Councilor Phillips.
Thank you. So just to help me understand this process, it's more of a specifics question. It would help me to understand, like, what's a sense of scale for the Dalkey's property, like approximately what's the acreage on that? Does it say?
The whole audience is shouting out.
I'm hearing 1.5 in the audience, but okay.
Yeah, but we actually are just asking questions of staff at this point, so let's just rely on them for the record.
1.5 acres.
1.5. And
1.5
then
acres.
it may not really be that germane, but it would help me again. What is that property zoned for? I understand that this one, it was shown earlier what the zoning is, but that, home plate property, the Dalkey
I believe that's
property.
RA, residential agriculture, single family.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, those are my questions on that topic. One of the things I heard tonight was the people in our community who have the lived experience of having different mobility and using wheelchairs, and they had some concerns about the safety that they have and other people like them using alternate routes of mobility have. Is that addressed in any of the 63 conditions? And what are the requirements at this stage in the process to address those safety issues that seem very real?
Yeah, I think we'll let Public Works address the street conditions and ADA requirements on public streets and intersections.
Good evening, Tony Martin, Assistant City Traffic Engineer. Can you rephrase the question? I mean, part of the development will build sidewalks along Doaks Ferry, along the entire length of their frontage, and continue them to Orchard Heights, along Orchard Heights, because there's not sidewalk on the north side today. And on the west side of Landegard, they're going to build a pedestrian island across from the high school so that people can get to the high school one stage at a time. It'll be marked, signed, pedestrian island.
Is there any place that we could see that like drawn out at this stage, or because I'm just having trouble tracking it in my
I am as well, so that'd be helpful to have a visual.
Yeah.
So on the map there, it would be about where the H is in Orchard Heights.
Clear at the bottom?
At the bottom, yes.
And that's where there'll be improvements?
Well, there'll be improvements along the entire frontage of Doaks Ferry and the entire frontage of Orchard Heights. There's no sidewalk along there today. And the sidewalk will continue to the west side of Landegard, and then there'll be a raised pedestrian safety island to get for people crossing to get to the high school.
And since I'm from Southeast Salem, so I'm just not as familiar with this part of town, but like, where's the island, the raised pedestrian crossing that we're talking about?
It'll be in the center turn lane. It's Orchard Heights is 3 lanes through there.
Okay.
So it'll be in the center turn lane. It'll be substantial. It'll be.
And in what phase of the development process would that improvement have to come in at?
Prior to occupancy.
Yeah, okay. And let me see if I have, so I couldn't quite understand the public comment in terms of where the incline was so much that the people who use wheelchairs that are manual were going to tip over. Is staff able to like?
I think what she's referring to is the intersection of Doaks Ferry and Orchard Heights.
Okay.
It was built a long time ago, built under different ADA standards, and that's on the. Let me get my directions. On the south side of Doaks Ferry, along Orchard Heights, if you've driven it, it comes down at a grade, and there's kind of a hump. And several years ago, we had some high school kids speeding and jumping, getting air, and they hit a tree there, and one of the children were killed. It's unfortunate, but it's designed for the speed. But they would have their friends hit the button, move over into the bike lane so they get the maximum air. They got air, lost control, hit a big fir tree. To fix that, I can only guess that it'd be several $1 million because we would have to take that hump out, bring everything to ADA standards, and chase grade up to the south along Doaks Ferry, probably past the high school. And it's already in a pretty big cut, and we'd be taking it deeper. But that would be a city project.
Okay, so it's not part of this?
No.
Okay.
That'd be millions, I think.
And then I think that concludes my public work, or at least I think this concludes what I might fall under public works. This is more of a general question. So we're supposed to be like the jurors at this point in this quasi-judicial process and call balls and strikes, and it's very criteria based. So I guess I'm proposing a hypothetical to staff that you may not be able to answer, but like if we approve or reject this, what are the most like salient criteria, or like what criteria stand out to you guys as what might come back to us from LUBA? Like if we reject this, what might LUBA say, no, you can't do that? Versus if we approve it, what might LUBA still have concerns with? Because this seems like it could go either way no matter what we do. Like someone may appeal this.
Councilor, could I ask you to hold that question for deliberations and not so much just questions to staff about the application? That's really more of a deliberation question.
And I appreciate that process question. I guess I'm trying to understand, like there's 63 conditions, so just which criteria, like how big of a deal is it that they're removing 42 significant trees now? Is that really more deliberative, or is that like a question to staff?
Our criteria needs to be clear and objective for housing. For example, I think we would argue our design criteria are clear and objective. They give standards that you can just look at and measure. Hey, it needs to be 5 feet here. It needs to be this here. It's pretty cut and dry. I think staff would say we believe the tree criteria is clear and objective because the clear and objective part is save the significant tree. If you want to not do that, you move yourself into more discretionary based path with the tree variance. I don't know that the applicant would agree with that assessment, but that's currently our assessment. They're also asking for a subdivision, and there's criteria that say things like a safe transportation system. That's not as clear and objective because you and I could disagree about what's safe, but what staff tried to do is go through and look at our adopted standards. For example, for streets, what is our standard? Build to that standard, which is a clear and objective standard, right? We have a standard for a street, as an example. I think, LUBA could decide anything's not clear and objective, based on what the council might, if it might be denied. If if you're asking about kind of the trade-off between the trees and the housing, you know, this isn't a subdivision for single family, but through the tree code amendment, we created standards for tree conservation plan for subdivision for single family. And we specifically said the things that we were going to look at for tree removal for significant tree is streets, planned streets that have to go through, utilities, topography, and density. And so even though they're asking for a variance and those criteria don't apply to them in that way, that's what we used as staff when determining, you know, how to balance the trees and the housing. As the applicant said, they're well below the maximum density allowed on this lot. They were asking for extra parking and we said no, and they've now agreed and pulled that back. There are planned streets through here. Utilities have to be built. It's a very steep site, as the applicant and Public Works staff have alluded to. So we feel like we've hit the balance. That's what staff was trying to do, or balance all of those things and still preserve as many trees as possible.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. This is going to be again directed to Public Works. So, as I understand it, some of the increased traffic that this area will generate will need to have potentially some changes in the traffic pattern, or potentially a stoplight. Certainly, you're already working on pedestrian crossings. I'm just wondering, as you see this coming through, and of course, knowing that it will cost a lot, how do you feel you'll be approaching this increased traffic?
The traffic analysis that was submitted by the applicant's engineer evaluated several intersections in the vicinity. They included Wallace Road. It indicated that they all operate within the standards. We are growing and traffic is growing, and we're going to experience that. The signal at Orchard Heights and Doaks Ferry is adequate for the traffic. There are multiple routes to get out. Our bottleneck is always going to be Wallace Road and getting over the bridge to the other side of the river. So it will be more congested. There's no doubt about that, but we can't build our way out of congestion anymore.
Councilor, go ahead.
I think too, what I'm trying to understand is what we might be doing for pedestrian safety in crossing these streets, and if there's going to be appropriate signals, length of times for pedestrians in whatever manner.
So the traffic signal in the one at Orchard Heights and Doaks Ferry is the closest one. The signal timing is set based on the pedestrian crossing speed of 3.5 feet per second. So that is built in. We have to do that for pedestrians. If we find a situation where we have a population of slower moving citizens, elderly, then we can increase that crossing time. It takes away from the vehicle time, but that's okay. You know, we have to do what we have to do.
Thank you. It sounds like there's ways to adjust. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Phillips, for bringing up the ADA questions. Those were really important to me. I believe the woman who testified is Ms. Chanchetta. Was that her name? Are we addressing her concerns and in the area that she was speaking of? Do we know that? And is that something that I'm hearing maybe down the road, a Public Works issue rather than an applicant issue? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I believe Mr. Martin said that it's not directly related to this development. It's an existing site constraint.
It's an existing condition, and it would be a city project that would need to come in and make those improvements.
Okay, thank you for that. Lastly, I would doubt that the Dalkeys thought that one day this would pop up around their property, and I don't want it to go unnoticed that I feel that for you. That must be difficult to consider, losing your driveway and having to come through a parking lot. I just want you to know I hear you on that. I just want to be super clear that they call it I see the word a subdivision tentative plan. Is the word tentative because it's going to change a little bit? Is that what that means?
No, that's a great question, Councilor Hoy. The land use application that they applied for that you do for a subdivision, the land use portion is called tentative. And then at the very end, when you finish your survey work and you build your improvements, you record the final plat with the county surveyor, and that's what actually creates the lots. So the land use is tentative in that it's not creating the lots. At the end, if the council were to affirm this tonight or later this month, they wouldn't then be 6 separate lots. They still have a lot of work to go through, including survey work, setting pins, all kinds of different stuff. And at the end, a final map is recorded, and that's the final process. So it's a two-step process for every subdivision.
I appreciate a better understanding of that. Thank you. The last thing then is this tonight is the last opportunity for the public to have input on this development. Is that right?
Well, there was a request to continue the hearing, so the council will either have to continue the hearing or hold the record open for written testimony and move your deliberations to another night. That's a requirement under state law since that was requested. So there will be some opportunity still during this land use portion to provide testimony. Once the decision is issued, if, for example, it's approved eventually by the council, then it's no longer in a public process after that, unless for some reason the applicant would want to change their plans and go back through the public land use process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for staff? I'd like to move on to questions for the applicant then. I'm sorry, we would like to do rebuttal first.
Yeah, I know we've already had applicant rebuttal, but we did have several questions of staff where they expressed some opinions, so I want to allow the applicant to come back up to rebut specifically the staff's responses.
And then we'll go to questions for applicant?
We're done.
I'm sorry?
We're done with questions for the applicant.
Oh. So we'll go to applicant rebuttal.
All right. Well, I think staff did a great job answering the questions. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. There was questions about conditions 5 and 7. Those are about extending services up to the edge of Landegard, not through Landegard in front of the existing homes. There was talk initially about the possibility of having to extend this was zone change. We went to the neighborhood meeting and we discussed it there. There was talk at that time that we might have to extend water and sewer through Landegard. And at that point, there was discussion about how those homes, which are on septic and wells, if they would be required to connect and who would pay. So I think that's where that stems from, but I don't think that's a concern anymore because we're not extending those services through Landegard. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't believe that there's any proposal to eliminate the easement for the Dalkeys to get through their property. They'll still have access in the same width that they have access now. So, and it's in the same, we made sure that it was in the same location so their existing driveway would still be operational. And we made sure that the grading matched so that it would fit in with their property. That was one of the site constraints we had, was we wanted to make sure that we fit into the Dalkey property so that their driveway would still function the way that it does now. Trying to go through my notes here. In terms of ADA, we are required on site in order to meet fair housing standards that require accessible routes and departure, accessible units, and all those things. That's mandated by federal law, and we will be. I like to comply with federal law, so we'll be doing that. That's kind of. Am I missing something? Okay. If you had any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sorry, we're done with questions for applicant.
Okay.
I've been told by council.
Okay.
Thank you.
So at this point, since there was a request to continue the hearing, your options for council are to either continue the hearing to the next council meeting date or close the hearing and keep the written record open. Given the September 22nd deadline we have under the 120-day rule, my recommendation would be to close the hearing, keep the record open for 7 days for new evidence and written testimony, then 7 days for written rebuttal for all parties to rebut any new evidence that was submitted during that first 7-day period, and then a final 7-day period for the applicant's written final argument. And I can repeat that because I know that's a mouthful.
And somebody who's considering a motion might want to take notes. I'm looking to the end of the table there. One or eight. What do you guys?
I can always say move staff recommendations. I might not.
I think Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie has given you a lifeline there.
I love being council president.
So do you have a motion then? Or do we want to talk about, do you have a motion?
They literally just handed, I haven't even looked at it.
Feel free.
Okay, is everybody going to stare at me while I do that?
Yep.
Oh, dear God. Okay, I have a motion.
Go for it.
I move that we close the public hearing and keep the written testimony, public testimony open for 7 days. Also 7 days for rebuttal and another 7 days for an applicant's final written statement, with deliberations happening on August 14th. And that's it.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion by Stapleton, second by Phillips. Discussion. Councilor Nordyke.
I'll be casting my vote in favor of the motion. For someone like me, it's actually more helpful for me to read your testimony. I need time to process all of the oral testimony that I received tonight, and I encourage everyone who gave live testimony tonight, please sign up to take advantage of written testimony. Tell your friends, tell your neighborhoods. To me, it's helpful when I have this much information to assimilate, to see it in writing. So I don't see this as closing the door to public input. I actually will personally find it more helpful to understanding and weighing the pros and cons through the deliberation. So for those reasons, I will be supportive of the motion.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Councilor Gwynn.
I, too, will be in support of the motion. The last person that, I think she was from Multi-Tech, did bring up a question in my mind, so.
Perhaps if you were to ponder it out loud, they would address that in their written testimony in the future.
So that person said something about water and sewer would not be affected by the neighbors. So I would love in written testimony for someone to indicate how the neighbors will be affected then. Are they going to continue to have water or well and septic? Will they have the opportunity to connect to city services if they choose to? Those sorts of things are questions in my mind.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion. Councilor Varney.
Thank you very much. Yeah, since I'll kind of follow on what Councilor Gwynn just did, because I do have some questions that are going to need to be addressed. One of my biggest concerns is the groundwater recharge in that area, and the plans were, I found there's an old landscaping plan that has some of the structures, some of the green stormwater infrastructure, but I would have some real questions about the degree where certain facilities are going to be located, things like bioswales, rain gardens, permeable pavement, whatever. And the reason this is really crucial to me is because down in Lot 6 is Willark Brook. And the whole area up there is somewhat groundwater deprived. In fact, it has a classification, the whole area extended, that it's sensitive in terms of groundwater. And so I need some reassurance that that is going to be addressed because and what I mean is retention of rainwater so that it can trickle down and recharge, as well as the retention and the detention facilities to address pollutants, et cetera, before it goes down into Willark Brook. And so I just wanted to mention that. That's a huge concern for me environmentally. This is a very sensitive area.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Ready to vote? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Gonzalez, absent. Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Aye.
Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. We are on to item 5A. Councilor Nordyke, do you have a motion? Or did we have a staff presentation first? I see Mr. Gamalo heading to the microphone.
Yes, we did plan for a staff presentation.
Okay, sorry. We're going to go to staff presentation first, then I'll come back to you, Councilor.
Thank you. I almost got bailed out there, but.
This close.
Okay. There we are. Are you going to? Is that it? Yeah. Yeah, just go to slideshow. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Anthony Gamalo. I'm a senior transportation planner with City of Salem Public Works. I'm here tonight to speak briefly about a refinement plan for Salem Heights Avenue South. Through this plan, we intend to achieve 3 goals: improve the safety and utility of the street for all users, reflect the existing character of the neighborhood, and result in or identify and implement one or a series of projects that can be adopted into the Salem Transportation System Plan. As you heard earlier this evening, the impetus for this was the Wren Heights development back in 2019. The neighbors there, they were concerned over traffic and other issues that were going to be generated by the incoming subdivision. They requested our assistance in developing a plan that would make the street safer and more comfortable for all users. A project advisory committee was developed. You heard from several of them tonight, and I apologize. They kind of stole my thunder with their excellent testimony, and I'm repeating a lot of the things they said. This group consisted of concerned neighbors. You heard from some of them. They were great. I want to underscore the importance of their involvement in this planning process. They really led it from the outset, and we were really there, sort of guided by the guardrails that they were putting down for us in the process. The project extent is a 2/3 mile long segment of Collector Street in the Swan neighborhood of Ward 7. It's residential in character with a robust canopy of mature trees. There are 2 elementary schools in the near vicinity, Candelaria Elementary and Salem Heights Elementary, and the street is significantly underimproved. It lacks sidewalks, bicycle facilities, curb, stormwater collection facilities, or even a real shoulder. There's significant topography on the street as you go west from Liberty Road. And that topography can lend itself to speeding and does cause sight distance issues at some locations. The street was annexed from Marion County in 1947. This aerial here, I don't know how clear it is, this was taken in 1961. If you look, you can see that by this point, the residences along the street, they were largely built out already. The lots had been laid out in such a manner that the street right-of-way itself was fairly narrow. This is particularly true on the eastern half of that project, of the project extent, east of that Wren Heights development. In developing this plan, our main challenge was going to be to design a street cross-section that fit within the constraints of the limited right-of-way, but still met the needs of all users to create that safe and comfortable experience. We relied very heavily on public participation to develop this plan. We worked with the Project Advisory Committee to host community meetings. which were really well attended. We did a walkthrough of the project extent with some tools to measure the right-of-way, identify the property lines, etc. And we also designed and distributed 2 community surveys to the area to help guide our efforts. The first survey asked residents about their priorities with regards to making street improvements versus protecting the existing tree canopy. We received almost 200 responses. The feedback we received was that while maintaining the tree canopy was extremely important, neighbors did want to see some improvements made for pedestrians and bicyclists. We sent out a second survey after designing some cross-section options. These, we designed 3 48-foot wide cross sections that varied in character. The first was a 24-foot wide curb-to-curb street with a 10-foot wide multi-use path on one side of the street. The second was a 28-foot wide curb-to-curb with a bike lane on the north side and sidewalks on both sides of the street. And the third was a 30-foot wide curb-to-curb with a bike lane on the north side and a sidewalk on one side of the street. We received 343 responses to this second survey, asking folks which option they preferred. 48% of the respondents preferred the multi-use path option. 33% preferred sidewalks on both sides of the street, and 19% opted for sidewalk on one side of the street. Currently, the city has more than the 48 feet of right-of-way that we would need on the west half of the project extent. The eastern half only contains 40 feet of right-of-way, so we would need to, at some point, obtain 8 feet of right-of-way to accommodate the improvements that we're proposing. Salem Heights is a collector street, and the city standards state that the width for a collector street is 60 feet. However, the Transportation System Plan does empower the Public Works Director to allow a special cross-section in constrained situations such as this. This is an example here elsewhere in town of a 10-foot wide multi-use path. It's on Auto Group Avenue Northeast. We constructed it as part, well, we had a developer construct it as part of our Winter Maple Bikeway. This path and the planter strip are straight along the street. But it's important to note that on Salem Heights, the path, the planter strip, and the street itself can all be modified within that right-of-way, within that 48-foot right-of-way that we're talking about, in order to minimize the impacts on the existing tree canopy. And I want to emphasize that we're at the planning stage of this process. For example, while we're recommending the cross-section option with the 10-foot multi-use path, we are not recommending which side of the street that would be placed on. That type of decision and others will come farther down the road in surveying, design, and construction stages of the project. Each of those are accompanied by further rounds of public outreach. The agenda item tonight that we're bringing to the council is really about selecting a cross-section concept and memorializing it in the Transportation System Plan. However, we've heard some concerns tonight, and we've heard them in the past about speeding. I want to underscore that because this council, back on June 26th, adopted the Neighborhood Traffic Management Plan, city staff are now empowered to use that plan to consider Salem Heights for traffic safety measures such as speed cushions or speed radar signs as appropriate, as will be allowed by the topography and the width. I just want to be clear that this plan doesn't preclude the implementation of NTMP measures on that street. Which leads me to the recommendation. Staff recommends that council accept the Salem Heights Avenue South Street Refinement Plan and incorporate its recommendations into the Salem Transportation System Plan at the next amendment opportunity. Thank you so much for your consideration. and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Gamallo? Councilor Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gamallo, I'm just, maybe it's a matter of curiosity or consideration, I don't know which, but are the people opposed to this going to lose some part of their property in the process of the development? Like, are they going to lose frontage?
No.
Okay.
No. Now, like I said, on the eastern half of the whole project extent there, we will need to acquire right-of-way, 8 feet of it. Now, how that happens, it can be 8 feet on one side, it can be 6 feet on one and 2 on the other. It depends a lot on the conditions at the exact location and the city working with the property owners in that area. It's a process, right-of-way acquisition is a process, but it's a cooperative one between the city and property owners. Like I said before, many of those decisions will be results of stages that we haven't reached yet. Design, survey, and construction. And again, each one of those steps carries with it its own public outreach. So there won't be any surprises.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Gwynn.
On those same lines, my question was actually on the properties that lack the 8 feet on that easterly side, how long is that? Because the whole, I mean, how, is it a block?
Is
it a half mile?
Yeah, the blocks kind of vary in length there, so yeah, it's not kind of standard. The whole extent is 2/3 of a mile, more or less. It's a little bit less than half of that.
So half of it?
Yeah.
Any idea how many properties are impacted by that?
I haven't counted them. I can get back to you with that.
Well,
yeah.
And the reason I ask is because I know one side is that condo
Yes.
project.
Yes.
So, yeah, so, okay. I guess that's it.
Other questions for staff? Councilor Hoy. Okay, other questions? Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. So you've described that we're just deciding on the concept, and then when it comes time to actually laying this out, this may adapt a little bit or potentially change somehow?
Well, the language is high level because within that concept, like I said before, we can, one of the major goals we want to achieve here is to maintain the existing character of the neighborhood and to protect that tree canopy as best we can. At this high-level planning stage, yeah, we don't want to, we can't really get into those tight design questions, right? That sort of plus and minus, like if we do this at this location, it might cost us that tree, right? Those questions will come down the road. But like I said, they will come with their own round of public involvement and further meetings. Yeah, but this is higher level, just picking a concept, and that'll be sort of the guiding light going forward.
Thank you.
Councilor Gwynn.
So I'm just curious how far east that goes. And the reason I'm asking is because I know it ends right at Sunridge Drive.
Yeah.
So Sunridge, there's no sidewalk. I mean, that's barely.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It doesn't actually end at Sunridge. It ends at Crestview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's prior to that.
Yeah. And the eastern extent is Liberty Road.
Right.
The western extent is Crestview.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Right.
No worries.
Right. No, I was in my brain. I was just mixed up. I too agree with the neighbors that Salem Heights is a treacherous drive, especially coming down that hill. I've lived in South Salem for many, many years, and I've said it before. I'm a real estate broker, so I've found myself cutting through and going down and people fly down that street. So I would love to know that as we're doing this refinement plan, that speeding is incorporated in the plan and an important part of it.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, our primary tool for that going forward at this and other locations is going to be that neighborhood traffic management plan. But one doesn't preclude the other.
Other questions for staff? All right, Councilor Nordyke, I think we're ready for your motion now.
Thank you. I move staff recommendation. Specifically, I move that we accept the city staff's recommendation that we accept the Salem Heights Avenue Street Refinement Plan and incorporate recommendations into the Salem Transportation System Plan at the next amendment opportunity.
Second.
Moved by Nordyke, seconded by Stapleton. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I first want to thank all of the residents who signed up to give written testimony as well as live testimony for this evening. I heard you loud and clear. I also appreciate the shout out that Julie Curtis, one of the residents impacted by this project, gave to Mr. Gamallo specifically. This is testimony as to the effectiveness of city staff when we work well with our residents, when we engage them early and often in development processes. So kudos to Mr. Gamallo and his entire team. I know that every staff project that we see is really the tip of the iceberg. So I'm in favor of the recommendation, which is the multi-use path, for several reasons. For one, it is the most popular option out of all of the three options given to the survey respondents in the area by far. Also, it takes into consideration things we've talked about often at council, the importance of pedestrian safety and bicycle access. And we also know that tree canopy is near and dear to South Salem residents, and this multi-use path has a meandering option to it, which means that it will take into account a meander to allow for the existing tree canopy. So it's really trying to thread that needle, and I think staff did an excellent job doing that. And then lastly, Mr. Gamallo addressed a point that I had raised earlier, which is how do we make sure we look into speeding? And as Mr. Gamallo made clear, nothing in this plan, adopting this plan tonight, would preclude us from also utilizing our brand new neighborhood management transportation plan to address the calming measures that Councilor Gwynn mentioned. Whether it's radar or safety cushions and whatnot, I think speeding is definitely a challenge on Salem Heights because of that steep climb, because it looks like a straightaway when you first come on. So to me, I feel that this option, although it doesn't please everybody, I've yet to see an option that does. And overall, I think that this is the best path forward. And lastly, as Mr. Gamallo pointed out, this is not the end. There will be ongoing discussion to take into account right-of-way, as Councilor Hoy mentioned, and there will be multiple additional rounds of public input as we start getting more and more specific in terms of actually funding and implementing this plan. So for all these reasons, I'm supportive of staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez absent. Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. Without objection, I'm going to temporarily move to item 8. We have a person that signed up, and this meeting went longer than I thought it might, so I didn't call them up earlier, but if we could go to item 8 and allow for some quick public testimony, and then we'll go back to item 5. So Joaquin Lara Midkift, we'll bring a microphone to you. If you would just introduce yourself for the record, a reminder, and either your ward or your address, and a reminder you have 3 minutes.
Am I heard?
Yes.
Well, that's very considerate of you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, city councilors, neighbors. My name is Joaquin Lara Midkiff, and I rise today as a member of the city's Human Rights Commission and a resident of Ward 8. On Tuesday, Salem heard the news that Mr. Russell Michaelis, a 64-year-old unhoused and longtime Salem resident, who was beaten by a group of passing teenagers on the afternoon of June 29th in the Lancaster area, had died from his injuries. And I think we all mourn the loss of a neighbor. You see, as I approach a year and a half on the commission, I have been reflecting on our mission. Among other things, to serve residents, protect human rights, and promote justice. In my time, city leaders have taken material steps in meeting the needs of our unhoused community, not least of which amending Chapter 97 that includes housing as a protected class in Salem, a proposal that originated with community advocates and the HRC. And despite our committed efforts to serve the unhoused community, Mr. Michaelis is not the first instance during my time with the city that an unhoused neighbor has sustained life-threatening injuries by passers-by. The thread that I have noticed that unites these instances, both as a commission member and a disability justice advocate, is a prevailing disregard for our most vulnerable community members. We know, for example, that more than 2/3 of unsheltered Salemites identify as having a disability. And this fervent indifference that leads able-bodied, often young men, to attack aging, disabled strangers in public runs deep and is not arbitrary. It colors many of our everyday conversations, and despite our best efforts, it enters our public policy. Frontline workers and community advocates see the impact of these attitudes. We see it too. In our annual Community Belonging Survey, about which Council will be receiving a presentation in the near future. But having worked on this development, I will share that we modified it to account for place of discrimination this year. That is to say, when folks are living discrimination in Salem, where are they experiencing it? Among respondents experiencing houselessness, 76% of whom report experiencing discrimination on a daily or weekly basis, public outdoor spaces, businesses, healthcare settings, government offices were places where that discrimination is reported to be most rampant, places of public trust. And in conclusion, I share this today because another part of the HRC's mission is to promote harmony through conciliation and public education. And as a citizen and a neighbor, it is my strong belief that Council must do more to combat the prejudices that lead to the profound suffering and now death of members of this vulnerable community. Taking a cue from the city's stated priority around strategic communication and community engagement, this means invest in public education. Invest in messaging, invest in storytelling and moral leadership alongside housing and economic policy. Because beyond crowded camps, a more urgent issue facing our community at large is the one in which some feel compelled to assault and kill a neighbor due to circumstance and power. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for highlighting this horrific event. It's important to keep it in our conscience, and I appreciate your efforts. And with that, we'll return back to the agenda, and now we are on item 5B. Councilor Nordyke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to direct staff to provide staff support and city resources to host a South Salem Town Hall for wards 2, 3, 4, and 7.
I'll second.
Motion by Nordyke, second by Gwynn. Councilor Nordyke, to your motion.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. The cost estimate for hosting this town hall, which is, again, a back-of-the-napkin rough estimate from our CFO, is under $5,000. So I just want to start with that, knowing how price-conscious we are. And for under $5,000, we can have an unprecedented opportunity to address South Salem issues and at a South Salem town hall. You've no doubt noticed the level engagement of South Salem residents with city government. They care about development in their area. They care about overlay zones impacting the character and historical nature of their neighborhoods. They care about impacts to tree canopy. They care about development coming to South Salem, especially affordable housing developments. They care about transportation, traffic, pedestrian safety. We have a lot of schools and a lot of parks and a lot of seniors living in South Salem who like to walk wherever they go to reach their destinations. And so for all these reasons, I thought it was high time that we host a South Salem Town Hall that will feature all 4 South Salem city councilors to talk about the issues that face South Salem specifically. You see, as you know, most of our residents don't really know where the ward boundaries are, but they know what part of city they are in. They know the traffic congestion issues in their area, and they don't much care whether it's Councilor Gwynn's ward or my ward, Councilor Nishioka's ward or Trevor's ward. They just know that they live in South Salem and they want to have a safe, sustainable environment where they can raise their families, where they can work, send their kids to school, use our parks, use the incredible local businesses that open shop in the South Salem area. So, having conducted a town hall last year myself, personally, I can tell you there is strong interest in hosting a town hall. And I thought, why stop at Ward 7? I get folks who ask me questions about the South Salem area all the time. And as a product of the way our neighborhood associations are structured, most neighborhood associations hear from multiple counselors and have multiple counselors that serve the same neighborhood association. So for those reasons, I thought, rather than asking staff to support me unilaterally, why not have the city staff support the 4 city councilors representing South Salem to talk about South Salem specific issues? You will notice in public testimony, we heard from individuals such as the South Central Association Board. That neighborhood association voted unanimously to support this concept. We also heard from folks like Bill Dixon, who is in the Southwest Association of Neighbors, and Swan also is supportive of it, and so on. So for all these reasons, I would like to create a town hall. And again, the back of the napkin, very rough draft cost estimate is minimal. In a city budget of over $750 million, we're looking at less than $5,000 to put on a town hall, which will not only allow us to talk directly with our residents about South Salem issues, we are also going to be inviting, if the motion passes, neighborhood associations to participate in this. I would love it if they could display information, put out sign-up sheets, let people know about upcoming events. It's an opportunity, a cheap and low-cost opportunity to build community within the South Salem area. And by the way, nothing in my motion precludes other areas of the city from forming their own town hall down the future. Perhaps North Salem would like to host one. In any event, I know that my residents want to hear more from us and they want to engage with us. And this strikes me as an effective bang for buck approach to do so. And for those reasons, I ask for your support of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Councilor Hoy.
Not sure if this is discussion or a question for later, but if possible, if North 5 and 6, say, wanted to have a town hall, can we just copy the plan that the South Salem Town Hall folks have created?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Phillips.
Yeah, I thought that there might be someone, and maybe it falls on me, to consider, maybe tabling this so we have a little more time to get the other half of the equation. I'm supportive in broad strokes of the concept of improving communication with the community at large, but as a body, I want to make sure that we move forward that'll cover the whole city. So I mean, this could work out really well for the 4 wards that are included, but I want to make sure that the door isn't just open, that we take this opportunity, if we get information from staff, to give us a layout for how we would include the other 4 wards that weren't included in the original motion. So, I mean, I think I'm at least considering tabling this to redraft the motion so it includes the whole city.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Councilor Nishioka?
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. So yes, I want to just say, Councilor Nordyke, this is a fantastic idea. And we have heard today how important communications and public input is in understanding what we do and how our citizens feel. I would like to move a substitute motion to delay council consideration of this item until August 14th, and I will speak to that motion.
Second.
Counselor, to your motion.
Thank you. Again, as I said, this is such a fantastic idea. I think you're like ahead of your time. We recently had work session on communications, and we hear frequently that people don't always get the information that they feel deserved of. And when we go to neighborhood association meetings, I try to impart as much information as I can that has been in council meetings. But yet I find that oftentimes it's not sufficient, or I may tell them about what is happening with another neighborhood association, and they want to hear about it too. So then I have to ask city staff to come to not only the previous neighborhood meeting to discuss a certain issue that happened there, they come to another one. And I would love to find a way where we could, as Councilor Nordyke has said, having a group, because not everyone knows what ward they're in or what neighborhood association they're in, but they know what part of town they're in. So I love this concept, but I'd really like to have this go back to staff and help us understand, one, the cost, how this could benefit city staff, or the cost that it would incur if it were just going to one town hall or going to 3 neighborhood association meetings presenting the same information. I hope I'm making myself clear. I feel that, again, to Councilor Hoy's point, could we just adapt this motion? I'd like to see a motion that talks about each councilor and area being able to do this on their own. So I just feel this needs a little bit more time, and I would really like to see that this become sort of a presentation to a region, and that would include all the neighborhood associations in that area and the councilors of that area.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion. Councilor Varney.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Councilor Nordyke, for the motion. I am supportive of postponing this for a little bit for further conversation, so that all the wards are included. Also, although $5,000 may not seem like much, if we do it for individual neighborhood associations, that's going to become more expensive. I guess one of the questions that I would be asking is for staff time to be devoted to this, what will it be pulling staff away from? The important things that they're working on right now. So I guess I'm just saying I have some concerns, additional questions. In the past, we've done our own town halls, and it's been very, very helpful to get input from staff or handouts or whatever. This is another way to look at that communication process, which I really feel we need. But when I look back a week ago at the work session on communication, I feel that we're putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit here, because this might be able to be included in the plan we were talking about. And so I'm supportive of postponing it for a little bit.
Further discussion. Councilor Nordyke.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, the concept is to have a South Salem specific town hall. If you open it up to the whole city, you lose the point of a South Salem town hall, because this is about, as we've discussed, South Salem specific issues. So I think that if other parts of the city want to replicate that idea, I'm certainly in favor of that. But I just want to make sure I make clear that issues that face South Salem, many of them are unique to South Salem, just like there are issues unique to North Salem, for example. So I think it's important that the whole design of this town hall is about addressing the public safety issues, the traffic issues, the development issues, the things that happen within a specific region of town. So that's the concept behind it. If the mayor or if the city wants to host a town hall for come one, come all, that's a very different conversation. But this is about addressing all of the major changes that are happening in South Salem specifically. So I would just encourage my colleagues to think about that. A city-wide town hall is a totally different animal. And in my opinion, would be a very different matter altogether. The other thing, we do already have a cost estimate of about $5,000. And so I think it's important that if you want, staff can give you more of an estimate, but it will always be an estimate. The other thing that I want to make sure we're aware that what is the intention of postponing it until the 14th? If it's to gather more information from staff, I understand that. We already had a tentative date that we councilors had agreed on September 21, which seems to me like that is now making that a difficult timeline to meet. So it would have been helpful to have this information before the meeting rather than pushing it all the way to August 14th, which now makes that date nigh impossible. So I appreciate that. With all that being said, I understand that my peers want more information, and I'm supportive of that. I just want to make sure that as we consider moving forward, the point is to address things that are specific to South Salem. And if other neighborhoods want to do their own town halls, they're certainly welcome to it. But I appreciate all of the thoughts and comments from my colleagues. I'm hopeful it's something that we can do. Again, it's a low-hanging fruit and a very easy lift. And the neighbors were very enthusiastically supportive of it. So I encourage folks to take that into consideration as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nishioka.
Thank you. So I did not explain myself very well, and forgive me for that. So August 14th is the next meeting, and so that's why I want to move forward, and I believe that we can still get to the September 21st meeting that we have tentatively scheduled. I am very excited about this, and I agree with you. I'm not saying it shouldn't be just for South Salem. What I'm trying to figure out is how we make sure that we are including everyone, all wards, all councilors, not at one time, but we move forward with the 2, 3, 4, and 7, and then, as Councilor Hoy said, 5 and 6 could have one specifically to their areas. So I'm wanting to create a motion and understanding the cost impacts of that would allow each of the different wards to look at some of the things that are connected in their neighboring ward and have similar meetings. I'm not sure I like calling it a town hall because town hall implies it's more of a political presentation. Usually it's legislators that come and speak. So I guess I'm wondering if the term is appropriate if city staff are coming. So that was one thing that I was concerned about. And my motion of postponing is primarily to get more information on how we can make this work for all of us, with still the hope that September 21st would be the date for the first one, as we've already talked about. I'm not trying to take that or limit that. I'm just wanting to get more information and a better clarity of this whole concept, and I think it's a great one, and I think that our citizens will find it very important. I feel that it will be a great way to get more people to attend neighborhood associations and again, open up all of the doors of the communications issues that we seem to have, so I'm thinking it's a great thing. I think we just need to postpone it and get more clarity and make a motion next time meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Councilor Gwynn.
I'll be brief. I, for one, am super excited about doing this. I think it, like Councilor Nishioka said, you're before your time when it comes to stuff like this. I sort of feel like this is going to be the pilot project where going forward, our other counselors can use this as a roadmap. And if we spend $5,000, I feel like it's $5,000 well spent because the roadmap is laid out then for everyone else to use the information and and that guide. Like, you know, so I'm fully in support. I don't think we have to wait, but
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. I think it's a good start. I'm just not prepared to vote for the original motion, and I support the substitute motion at this time. My hope and goal would be at the next meeting, we could consider something that's like a two-piece motion, one for South Salem, one for North Salem, or something to that effect. It would help me to hear from staff, like, you know, does that just simply double the cost, or are there any unique, you know, components to including, you know, the different makeup of the two halves of the city of Salem? I understand there are constraints, like intuitively we have to limit this to probably 4 councilors at a time, because otherwise if we go to 5, we have a quorum. So I just think this isn't, you know, as ideal as I hope the next thing that we consider could be.
I'm guessing that Councilor Varney has questions about that whole scenario, but that's just me. Considering Ward 8 and West Salem, that wasn't included in anywhere in those equations. But
in my mind, they're considered part of the north half. They're north of where I live.
All right. Interesting. I'm not sure that the folks in West Salem would agree with that, but I hear you. All right. So I'm not sure that I remember what your substitute motion is. Councilor Nishioka, could you repeat it for us so we make sure that we're all talking about the same
I
thing?
move a substitute motion to delay council consideration of this item until August 14th.
Okay. Further discussion, or are we ready to vote? Will the recorder please call the roll on the substitute motion?
Councilor Nordyke.
Nay.
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
nay.
Councilor Gonzalez absent. Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. On to item 3.3B, Councilor Gwynn.
I pulled this tonight mainly.
Councilor, I'm sorry. We just need a motion first, and then we can talk about it.
Oh, sorry. So I move that we increase the navigation project funds from 5.2 to 5.3 million using existing state grant funds.
Second.
Moved by Gwynn, seconded by Phillips. Councilor, to your motion.
So I pulled this tonight to highlight the Navigation Center, and it's now up and running. I spoke with Sarah Webb today, who is the behavioral specialist, and I'm not exact, she does everything. She's amazing. I talked to her at great length today and asked how many folks are housed there now. She said between 25 and 30. They're bringing, and some of this is redundant. We've heard it before. But I think it's important that we know what's happening there and that we're highlighting the Navigation Center. I'm very excited, and I'm happy to say that I'm going to be volunteering there next week. So just to, and I don't know if that volunteering is the right word, I'm going to shadow them just to get a feel for what's happening there. So I'm very excited for that opportunity, and
Well, thank you, Councilor. I'm really excited to hear that you're going to be shadowing over there. I think that's going to be a great experience for you. And thank you for pulling this and highlighting it, because our Navigation Center is really, it's just getting started, but I think it's going to be such a gem in our toolkit. Councilor Stapleton.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for pulling this. Everybody here is so excited about the Navigation Center and the good work that they're already doing and will continue to do. I just have a quick question on this for the city manager. I know that we are doing an audit on our unhoused services that we're providing, and I'm assuming that the Navigation Center will be included in that. And I just was wondering, when should the council expect to hear back on that? And then also, how can we set it up so that council is getting regularly updated on the successes or struggles that we are facing in the services that we are helping to fund here in the city?
lots of questions in there, and I may need some help from Courtney to finish the response. But we have engaged with our consulting team from Moss Adams to develop a scope of work for that evaluation of our homeless response system. I don't believe that we're actually engaged in that work at this point in time, and here comes Courtney to rescue me.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Courtney Knox-Bush, and I work in the City Manager's office. And for your information, we are getting ready to kick off that work, and you would certainly be appraised when that does happen. Our intent is to finish the work in January of '24, so we would be moving at a rapid pace and be ready to present results at that time. But you would be engaged in some of the stakeholder interviews and engagements.
And Courtney, just to clarify, do you anticipate the Navigation Center being included at this point, or would it be in a future?
The subject is all of our grant funding. And we do provide some grant funding. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
And in regards to how do we maintain that stream, I think both Courtney and I recognize the importance of this as a communications priority, and we definitely look for those opportunities to push this forward in our communications channels whenever we can. Obviously, the lack of resources there constrains that somewhat, but both she and I are very aware of Council's interest here and also the interest that the community has, so we are trying to put that front and center.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, just to reiterate, I think that Council is really interested in getting regular updates on the successes and struggles that each of our different services that we're providing are experiencing, not only to celebrate, but also to fine tune as we need to, or however we can help as a council. So when you do get to that space where you're ready to let us know how often that would be, I would love to kind of have a conversation about that.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Varney.
Aye.
Councilor Stapleton.
Aye.
Councilor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councilor Phillips.
Aye.
Councilor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez absent. Councilor Hoy.
Aye.
Councilor Nordyke.
Aye.
Mayor Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, on to information reports. We'll go through those one at a time. Does anybody have anything on item 6A? I didn't see any hands. Oh wait, maybe I did. Councilor Phillips.
For the purpose of highlighting, can you please remind us or highlight for the community, what is the equity roundtable that we will be appointing a council liaison to?
Thank you, Councilor. So this is an appointment of a council liaison to the Equity Roundtable. And I know that, Ms. Anderson Ogilvy is sending us a lifeline. She's coming down to the microphone right now.
Hi, Lisa Anderson Ogilvy, your planning administrator. And I looked around and everyone else had left. So the Equity Roundtable will start as a pilot project with the planning staff and public works staff. We used it specifically in the beginning to look at displacement measures as we're working on our climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking. We're having to address displacement measures as one of the projects. So Eunice Kim and Julie Warnicke were leading it, and they had 4 meetings. So what they did is they reached out to all the different organizations, underrepresented kind of organizations around the city that they've worked with primarily through our Salem, and said, this is our idea. We want to do a roundtable. What do you think? And everyone said, that sounds pretty good. So we had 4 meetings where we presented ideas, we got feedback. It's not intended to be a big public event, but more of a detailed kind of working group on this project. And in the last meeting, we said we thought this worked really well and we would like to continue it on as we go through the transportation system plan and other projects, city projects, if the roundtable agreed. And they do want to continue it. And as we go through these other projects, but specifically they asked if they could have a counselor appointed. They thought that would provide more assurance that the items that they're raising throughout this work are actually addressed and are carried forward by city staff. So it will be used for other projects besides just
planning or public works as we go forward.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie. Anything else on item 6A? Councilor Hoy.
Just a question for Lisa or anybody. Is it displaced? Is that the word that's used
Displaced,
for those
yes.
funds? And how is that defined? Displaced?
I could explain the concept, but I see Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie coming back in case there's probably
Just
a more technical definition than I would offer.
Quickly.
Specifically in that project, it required us to look at planning efforts that would cause people to either not afford to live there anymore, or specific projects that actually maybe destroyed housing. So if you think of like a freeway going through and it removed housing, for example. So we looked at what kind of projects has the city done in the past, or what policies have we had that had caused displacement, and then how could we mitigate that in the future. And so, we kind of have a technical background to look at that, but we also wanted people's lived experiences, what they thought was causing displacement in their communities.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Anything else on 6A? Item 6B. Item 6C. Item 6D. All right, well, we have no first readings, no second readings. We already disposed of the public comment under item number 8. We're adjourned.